This story is about the Queen Elizabeth, the strongest demon queen in history who falls in love with a farmer boy. After 15 years, she finds him in a small village and finally confessed her love, but in different way than we know. The boy found himself unable to reject Elizabeth's love after seeing her magnificent face. I mean this face. But things turned to be more complicated after trying to feed him some juicy foods from his hometown. If you wish to find something like perverted things, go find it somewhere else. It's only a normal manhwa. The story begins in the midst of a conversation between the highest human priest and the demon queen while she was sitting on the throne of destroyed castle after the defeat of the human race. The high priest appeared to be one of the last survivors of the royal family, attempting to provoke the queen of demons by talking shit. However, one of the queen's knights silenced the high priest by forcefully kicking him in the face for disrespecting the great queen. The demon wanted to remind the high priest that no longer he had the power to challenge her majesty in such a manner. It seemed that the high priest had already embraced the demon into humans and even considered him a hero in vain. Witnessing how he had betrayed the human race left the high priest shocked. Meanwhile, the demon did not want to let the man talk nonsense anymore, so he transformed one of his hands into its true form in order to finish him off. Just as he was about to strike, the demon queen intervened and stopped him. The high priest got lucky as the demon stopped his hand right in front of his eyes, so close that even the slightest movement would have blinded him. The queen approached, discussing why the high priest should consider a demon as their ally, while the demon knelt before her. The demon queen's name was Elizabeth, the strongest demon lord from the beginning until now. She regarded the highest priest as a lowly human, not worth wasting her time talking to. Her eyes were filled with anger as she interrogated him, demanding the truth before she could devise 1,000 ways to make him suffer. It seems like the queen sought for the one destined to wield the legendary sword, as foretold by the priest. The prophecy stated that this hero would use the sword to defeat the demon king and their armies. The high priest was ready to sacrifice his life, but refused to betray the human race by revealing the man's name. Queen Elizabeth took a look at the holy sword embedded in the stone, contemplating who might possess the power to pull it out. After a moment, she touched the sword and returned to her throne, having given up on obtaining the answer from the highest priest. She looked forward to meeting the hero as soon as possible, as she believed no one had a chance against her. She decided to establish the castle as her base and guarded it with the strongest demons for the first year while waiting for the hero. In the second year, the number of demon guardians decreased by half, and the same happened in the third year. By the fourth year, everyone was gone except for 2 ordinary demons. By the fifth year, even those demons were dismissed. As Queen Elizabeth gave up on meeting the hero so soon, she opened all the gates and allowed everyone to pass through after 15 years. The city transformed into the capital for all kinds of races, including demons, dwarfs, beasts, elves, and humans. Under Queen Elizabeth's direct command, the city enjoyed peaceful days. One day, the queen gathered all the elders of each race in the region in her castle for a specific reason. She asked them if they had received any news about the prophesied hero recently. Both the dwarf and elf chancellors reported that they hadn't received any information about the hero, despite searching all over the woods and the town. They apologized for not having better news. The human chancellor made sure the queen understood that even if there was a prophesied hero, he would have no chance against the queen's army. Meanwhile, the demon chancellor whispered something else. Wondering why the great queen should be worried about a mere human, the beast chancellor had the same thought, whispering that no one could challenge them, not even the strongest humans. The elf woman considered the prophesied hero all nonsense from the highest priest, which only brought extra work for them. Suddenly, someone entered the castle shouting, "Reject the hero!" The dwarf man thought to himself, speaking of the devil, realizing that it must be the highest priest who appeared out of nowhere. Indeed, it was the highest priest, Barrow, who seemed to have changed sides and was now trying to show his opposition to the prophesied hero. Hearing his annoying voice, the queen became furious and first tried to silence him by grabbing his neck with her demonic hand, demanding to know where the prophesied hero was that he mentioned 15 years ago. Priest Barrow found himself in a dire situation and tried to find a way to escape the queen's punishment by saying, "It's not necessary for the prophecy to always be true. It might not happen." The demon knight from before tried to confirm those words in order to make the queen feel better. However, the queen did not want him to interfere and simply forced him to leave, which he had no way but to do it. The queen couldn't hold her anger any longer. She threw the high priest with her demonic energy towards the wall. The impact was so strong that it made the priest get stuck in the wall, with only his ugly legs visible to others. The queen, thinking to herself, she already had claimed to have reached the peak of the world, but now found it more boring than ever. She longed for a hero to appear and challenge her, to bring some excitement back into her life. She walked towards the legendary sword, hoping to find a way that would lead her to the prophesied hero sooner. As she gazed at the embedded sword, she couldn't resist the urge to hold it in her hand and try something unexpected. The chancellors watched in confusion and shock, as they had no idea what was going on in the queen's mind. She began using her demonic powers to pull the sword out of the stone, but at first she was unable to do so. This only enraged her further, and she put all her demonic and physical strength into pulling the legendary sword out. The chancellors found themselves in a dire situation and tried to save their lives by using defensive magic while overlooking the scene. But for the priest Barrow, the story was different. He was throwing backward, unable to do anything to protect himself, and begged others to put a defensive shield on him as well, but no one was care about him. Meanwhile, the queen's overflowing demonic energy started to passing through the castle's roof and reached the sky. In disbelief, she finally managed to pull the sword out of the stone and showed her true power to everyone. She held the sword in her hand, saying to herself, "Who said only a legendary hero can pull out this sword?" Suddenly, she felt something in her mind. It seemed like the sword began to show her an unknown place over the mountains, a small farm in the middle of the forest. The queen realized that this must be the location of the hero, the true owner of the legendary sword. She immediately raised her hand and summoned a teleportation spell to reach the farm in the quickest way possible. The demon knight begged her not to go, or at least let him accompany her in case something happens. But before he could reach her, she had already teleported. All he could do was catch one of her hair strands as she left, leaving the demon knight in a state of shock without being by the queen's side. On the other side of the continent, a newbie village had recently been created. A young boy with a straw hat was wiping the sweat off his face after working hard on his farm. And this boy was supposed to be the legendary prophesied hero. His name was Leing, an ordinary boy who enjoyed watching short videos on his way to work as habit. He had no other habits like playing games or watching anime or anything else to bring him joy. One day, when he was standing in the train in his way to work, was skipping all kinds of videos about farming, making food, treating and releasing injured animals to find a more interesting video. For a moment, he wished to be transported to another world with all kinds of interesting creatures. And his wish came true before he completely understood what he's asking for, and he was suddenly teleported to this new world without hesitation. At first, he was stunned to realize that he is no longer in the train and moved secretly to an unknown place. After spending a few days around, Leing slowly learned the basic skills necessary to survive under the guidance of the newbie system. Once he had fully learned these skills, the system informed him that it is the time to leave the newbie village and embark on an adventure. The boy found himself happy, living on this small farm, and questioned why he should do such a thing. The system explained that if he leaves the village and starts his adventure, he would meet all kinds of other people and learn new skills that would help him become a legendary hero and fight the demon lord someday. However, Leing refused to leave his farm as he had no intention of fighting any demon lord. In his mind, defeating the demon lord wasn't good enough reason to leave this village after having great life here. The system got shocked and kept repeating its quest to force him to leave, but Leing found more reasons to stay and refused to go, no matter how many times the system tried. He knew he was safe here as long as he stayed around the village, as the village was under the time barrier of the system. After that, Leping found himself leveling up by doing his daily works that loved to do, such as farming, hunting the animals in the forest around the village, forging and building the necessary stuff for the house, and meditation the rest of his free time in a quiet place. However, one day the system broke into pieces as it figured out it can't convince Leping to fulfill his mission as the legendary hero. After that, the MC kept living in peace, wishing for his peaceful days to last forever. Later, after a full day of hard work, he realized he was hungry enough to eat an elephant. But on his way back home, he found other tasks that needed to be done before he could eat, like chopping the woods. For a moment, he remembered that he had left his axe somewhere else and needed to find it. But suddenly, the sky's color turned red, and thunderous clouds started to appearing all around the village. Leping looked at the sudden change in the weather above him, wondered what was happening. The boy realized it isn't possible to have such stormy weather at this time of the season. Unbeknownst to Leping, it wasn't the weather, but the queen who had teleported there a moment ago. In other hand, relief washed over Elizabeth's face as she realized that she finally had found the place where the legendary hero lives. And soon after, she saw something weird that caught her attention. It was the hero, who was running at full speed to gather the clothes he had washed and also the dried fishes, thinking that it was about to heavy rain. The queen was flying in the middle of the sky, realizing that the boy must be scared of her and was running away to find a safe place. Meanwhile, MC quickly reached for the dried fish and gathered them, followed by picking up some clothes. He felt relieved to have gathered them before the rain began. Suddenly, a barking robotic dog named Wang Kai caught his attention. Wang Kai was Leping's companionship, and it seemed like the dog had spotted something that MC couldn't see. Wang Kai attempted to indicate that there was something in the sky behind the boy, but Leping didn't understand the dog's message and wanted to return to the building before the rain started. Despite Leping's insistence, Wang Kai remained in place and continued barking, leaving the boy curious about its actions. Suddenly, the boy heard a voice calling out to him. When he turned around, he noticed there's something in the sky, but it was too distant for him to identify clearly. The demon queen grew angry upon hearing Leping's voice as he addressed her inappropriately with saying something. MC quickly realized he was in trouble and apologized, wondering why such a powerful demon would appear in a small village on the continent's border. The queen, still skeptical about the boy being the legendary hero prophesied to arrive, decided to verify before taking any unnecessary actions. She summoned small something like bolts of lightning and attempted to attack the boy, controlling them with a single finger. Initially taken aback by the sudden attack, Leping soon found himself defenseless and hopeless. He closed his eyes, awaiting his impending demise. Queen Elizabeth observed the situation calmly, realizing that something unexpected had occurred. The lightning did not strike the boy. Instead, it began to rotate around him. It became evident that the lightning was the legendary sword, returning to its true owner's hand. As soon as the boy felt the sword in his hands, he was shocked but tried to assume the role of a true hero to assert his dominance. In fact, it was all queen imagination. He was frightened to find something attached to his hand that couldn't be easily removed. After struggling for a while, he realized it must be the holy sword mentioned by the system, the one he had to pull out from the stone. Meanwhile, Queen Elizabeth became certain that the boy was indeed the hero, but she couldn't sense any extraordinary energy from Leping, wondering how this was possible. She introduced herself as Queen Elizabeth, the most powerful demon in history, while casting a potent magic spell to finish off the poor boy. MC realized he was in significant trouble upon hearing the demon queen's name while his stomach rumbling with hunger. Suddenly, Wang Kai started barking at the queen again, and the boy tried to stop the dog from provoking her in order to not make the Elizabeth more angry. However, it appeared it was too late. The queen planned to cast 3 spells simultaneously, aiming to mercilessly end the boy's life. 3 colossal meteor-like objects emerged slowly from the spells, each possessing enough destructive power to annihilate the entire area. Leping recalled the system's warning that the battle between him and the Demon Queen was inevitable, but he didn't pay any attention to it. For a moment, he regretted his decision to remain on the farm and dropped his sword, surrendering to the fight. Trembling, he made his way towards his house, wondering why the Demon Queen had personally come to visit a novice hero. Upon reaching his destination, he glanced back at the sky, offering a faint smile, finding solace in his final moments. He then opened the door and entered the building, longing for more time to spend as he had in the past few months in this world. However, he knew that wasn't going to happen. After closing the door, he awaited his inevitable fate in his place. But something made the queen more enraged. When the boy smiled when he wanted to enter his place, she interpreted it as a message, a request for her to unleash her full power to fight MC. Queen Elizabeth couldn't help but comply with the poor boy's apparent wish. She increased the speed of the meteor-like objects to their maximum, testing whether the boy would flinch or not. Wang Kai, the robotic dog, sensed the imminent danger, and suddenly its system began doing something unfamiliar. It started calculating something like the speed and size of the meteors. However, the meteors were about to strike the village and the farm in less than a second. In disbelief, the dog transformed into a fully equipped machine gun with impressive missiles. Without hesitation, it unleashed its entire arsenal, hoping to stop or destroy the meteors before they impacted the ground. One moment after launching those missiles, not even small pieces of the meteors hit the Leing farm. Wang Kai stood there without any trace of fear, just as it had done before. The Demon Queen observed the dog and how it saved the village and the boy, realizing that the legendary hero possessed such an advanced magical tool that could easily counter her magic. Understanding this, she decided to reveal a glimpse of her true power to the boy, summoning far more than extraordinary magic. Queen Elizabeth conjured something as vast as an entire forest, known as apocalypse magic. Seeing how the hero avoided direct confrontation, she began losing interest in the fight and desired to end it right there and then. She unleashed the apocalypse magic towards the village and the boy. Wang Kai's eyes turned red, realizing that this time it was something 1,000 times stronger than the previous meteors coming for them. It swiftly started calculating, seemingly having plans to defend the area. After finishing its calculations, Wang Kai released a small black spinning core and propelled it towards the apocalypse magic without wasting any time. The core's speed increased with each passing second, nearing the collision point with the magic. Queen Elizabeth underestimated the small object and believed it couldn't compare to her great magic. At the moment of impact, she expected her apocalypse magic to devour the dog's small spell. However, the small spell transformed into a quantum mechanical black hole, rapidly increasing in size. It began devouring the apocalypse magic, leaving nothing behind in less than a second, as if there was nothing there in the first place. Witnessing this scene, Queen Elizabeth couldn't help but feel amazed and stunned. She wondered how such a small thing cracked her apocalypse magic in such a short time. For a moment, Elizabeth thought it might be Leing himself who was orchestrating all this from his hiding place in the building. In reality, Leing was doing something entirely different. He was lying on his bed, awaiting his death like a 100-year-old man. Curiosity about Wang Kai got the better of Queen Elizabeth, and she landed on the ground to see the robotic dog up close, while Wang Kai continued barking at her. Initially, she perceived it as a small pet, fiercely protecting its owner's life, and Wang Kai seemed dead serious about it. A brief smile crossed her face, stemming from the anger of realizing she had underestimated it as a demon queen. She began extending the size of her physical body, shouting loudly to let the hero know that she had only used less than 30% of her power. Anger overflowed within Elizabeth, compelling her to unleash her ultimate move, transforming into her god-demon form. Poor Wang Kai found itself utterly helpless against such a demon god, terrified just by its presence. It trembled as if it were about to pee in its pants, but fortunately, it had neither the urge nor the pants. The queen didn't give the poor dog a chance to calculate another way to defend itself and launched an attack. Meanwhile, Leing had fallen asleep an hour earlier, resigned to his fate of impending death. The sudden fight between the queen and Wang Kai generated loud noises, awakening the boy. Confused, he looked around his familiar and once peaceful home, questioning why he was still alive, expecting to be reincarnated somewhere else. MC sensed the sudden silence outside and became curious, wondering what had happened to the demon queen. Slowly and nervously, he attempted to open the door, eager to see the outcome. As he cautiously peered outside, he noticed a shadow standing in the yard, surrounded by a cloud of dust. After a moment, the boy realized it was Queen Elizabeth in her god mode, holding Wang Kai, who appeared battered and worn out. It seemed the loyal dog had fought to protect its owner until the very end. Looking at the scene, the boy couldn't help but feel sorry for his companion, calling its name to see if it would respond. Unexpectedly, it was the queen who became intrigued. She released Wang Kai and started moving towards Leing, still in her demon god form, attempting to make the boy feel worse about the demise of his beloved magical dog. However, the boy remained surprisingly calm and tried to convince her to resolve everything through conversation, emphasizing that nothing was more important than preserving his life. It seemed like the queen's only intention was to kill Leing, her only formidable enemy. However, Queen Elizabeth suddenly felt her body got heavier and couldn't take another step towards the boy. She realized she had already reached her limits after fighting for a long time with Wang Kai. 1 second later, she passed out and became all defenseless against MC. Leing was stunned to see the queen suddenly fall down, but he had no idea what was the reason behind it, as he didn't see her fight with Wang Kai. Ignoring the fact that the demon queen currently was his only enemy, he quickly went and held her in his arms to see if he could help her in any way. It sounds like the queen had lost all of her energy because of overusing her god mode and then lost consciousness. Her horns and clothes started to disappear in a matter of seconds. Leing found himself all embarrassed seeing the girl becoming all naked in his arms. For a moment, he thought maybe it was all the demon girl's plan to fool him. Shortly after, her clothes completely disappeared, and nothing was left except some stupid clouds that blocked our view to see the beautiful scene. Unlike us, the MC couldn't bear to see this scene any longer, and most likely he fainted due to blood loss from nose bleeding. Time passed and night arrived. The scene shifted to Leing's room where Elizabeth was still unconscious lying down on his bed, and looked like MC had put handcuffs on her hands, also dressed her in one of his clothes to ensure her safety. What an idiot. Suddenly, the queen woke up and regained consciousness, but she was more shocked to realize what had happened earlier. She tried to stand up as the thought of the legendary hero had not only defeated her, but humiliated her by capturing the great demon queen alive. Elizabeth couldn't help but wonder why the hero didn't use this chance to kill his only enemy and instead handcuffed her like a jailbird. Queen Elizabeth tried different ways to free herself from those handcuffs, but she still hadn't regained her energy fully, so she failed. Then, she thought the handcuffs must be another S-grade item like that legendary sword that she couldn't break. In result, she became hopeless and gave up. Elizabeth got a little curious about what else the legendary hero might hide in his place. Then she turned around and looked at all the stuffs that were in the room. The queen found herself unfamiliar with most of them, like never even heard about those things. The demon queen was drowned in thoughts, trying to find a way to escape this place and also regain her honor as undefeatable demon queen. When Leing suddenly entered the room with 2 dishes of food for the queen, seeing the queen in that situation made the boy feel sorry for her, but he knew it was for his own safety, as the demon queen could easily not only harm him, but kill him easier. MC felt a little nervous and repeated his last request again about resolving everything with talking instead of fighting. The boy glanced at the handcuffs and said, "As you were so terrifying back then, I had no choice but to do it." For a moment, the boy thought he was offending the girl, so he changed his word to being formidable and explained why he used those handcuffs. Queen Elizabeth looked at Leing, wondering why he changed his words so quickly. In another hand, Leing had a really soft heart. He said that there must be a misunderstanding between them, and he wanted to unlock the handcuffs in order to build trust between them. But at the same time, another misunderstanding arose. Elizabeth imagined the hero was humiliating her again by unlocking her hands and not considering her as strong enough to keep her locked. She even thought that the boy would force her to do whatever he wanted, including lovely-dovely things. She looked at the boy but didn't reveal what she was thinking about MC and waited for him to unlock the handcuffs. And so he did. Then Leing tried to keep his distance and said, "I did this to show you I have no ill intention towards you, so let's just talk it out." On the other hand, Elizabeth was thinking about herself, that she had no choice but to do whatever the hero asks for now, until she regains all of her power back. MC couldn't stand to see that cute girl on his bed any longer, so he turned his face away and told her to rest, for now. He left the queen all surprised by sudden act. Before leaving the room, he got lost in thoughts and explained to everyone why he didn't kill the demon queen while she was unconscious for a whole day. Our main character was a soft-hearted man who couldn't think of killing anyone, whether it was a human or a demon or anything. That's why he found a friendly solution for this situation that maybe would help him get out of this trouble, or even make Elizabeth his friend, or maybe waifu. Queen Elizabeth, filled with doubt, desperately wanted to prove that she was not as weak as the hero might think. She interrogated the boy, questioning the true nature of Wang Kai, if it truly was the MC's strongest magic tool. Leing, with a knowing smile, couldn't help but wonder why the demon queen believed Wang Kai held such magical power when he had only recently constructed it out of boredom. The surprise on Queen Elizabeth's face was palpable as she learned that the boy had developed this marvel all by himself, in an unknown place. In that moment, she contemplated using this opportunity to regain her strength and exact her revenge, convinced that without Wang Kai, she could finally find the energy she needed to finish the legendary hero off. Determined, she rose from her seat and discreetly tapped into her abyss magic, slowly advancing towards Leing. With calculated precision, she apologized for destroying what she believed to be the boy's most formidable magic tool for provoking the boy's feeling. Meanwhile, Leing remained oblivious to the danger lurking behind him. Engrossed in discussing the irreparable nature of Wang Kai's physical form, slowly pulled out the memory card inside its head. The boy stumbled upon a hidden compartment, and to her astonishment, Leing revealed 6 more robotic dogs, akin to Wang Kai. These mechanical companions cheerfully presented themselves to the queen, who, now resembling a lifeless entity, prepared to strike at the unsuspecting boy, taking advantage of his vulnerable state. However, Leing, entirely engrossed in his discovery, paid no attention to the imminent threat. He inserted Wang Kai's memory card into one of the robotic dogs, and in a matter of seconds, it came to life, mirroring Wang Kai's behavior from before. All the while, Queen Elizabeth observed, her mind conjuring images of Leing and his robotic army, mocking and derailing her plans once again. Overwhelmed by the sight of multiple magical tools, far beyond the scope of what she had anticipated, Elizabeth returned to the room, collapsing onto the bed, her face a mix of fear and disappointment. Suddenly, a delightful aroma wafted through the air, capturing her attention and piquing her curiosity. Leing, witnessing this spectacle, explained with a warm smile, "I noticed you had fainted, so I prepared some food to warm you up." He then unveiled the meal he had brought mere minutes ago were some ordinary dumplings and meat porridge. Initially, Queen Elizabeth, plagued by trust issues, feigned indifference, pretending not to require anything from the boy. However, the sight of the food ignited a ravenous hunger within her. Her stomach growled, betraying her true need for sustenance. Leing, perceptive to her hesitation, understood that she needed reassurance, perhaps due to a fear of gaining weight. He assured her that the food was crafted with fresh, healthy ingredients. Reluctantly, she took a leap of faith and agreed to sample one of the dumplings. The moment the first morsel touched her lips, a wave of exquisite flavors flooded her senses, a taste she had never experienced before. Leing, confident in his culinary skills, anxiously awaited her verdict. She remained silent, unable to resist devouring one dumpling after another, until almost all of them had vanished within a minute's time. Tears of joy streamed down her face, her cheeks flushed with the sheer delight of such delectable sustenance. She couldn't bear to swallow the last bite as it was so good, but she couldn't hold it in her mouth forever. Elizabeth succumbed to temptation, consuming it with reckless abandon. However, a strange sensation overcame her. The queen's eyes widened, her heart raced, and an intense surge of spiciness coursed through her being. This scene, often reserved for more mature art forms, most likely created by R34 and R36 artists. You know who I mean, right? But this was not an adult manga, so let us continue our tale. Elizabeth instinctively placed her hand on her trembling legs, repeatedly muttering, "It's spicy! It's spicy!" her body overwhelmed by the unfamiliar sensation. In that moment, all she could think was that Leing had maliciously poisoned her with this food. The protagonist, teetering on the edge of consciousness, bore witness to the Queen of Demons in such a state, and in a desperate attempt to explain, mentioned that he had merely added some chili, as he always did out of habit. Unfamiliar with the concept of chili, Elizabeth became convinced that the boy had tainted the food with ill intentions, a sinister plot to harm her. The boy found himself in yet another misunderstanding and desperately tried to solve this new problem by suggesting eating the meat porridge to clear the heat and reduce the fiery feeling created by the chili. Elizabeth, still unable to trust him after believing he had poisoned her, had no other option but to reluctantly accept the porridge to calm her hot body. As she tentatively attempted to eat, the first spoonful of food smelled just as nice as the dumplings, and she couldn't resist taking a bite. However, this time, the sensation was completely different. Suddenly, she felt weightless as if floating in the sky, and her mind was filled with overwhelming peace and comfort. Elizabeth no longer cared about her role as the Demon Queen or defeating the prophesied hero. All she wanted in that moment was to let go of everything and live carefree. She felt insignificant more than ever and was consumed by this dreamlike, ethereal feeling. However, she knew she couldn't live in this dream forever and desperately tried to pull herself together. She looked at her body and noticed that her powers had advanced even further after consuming these foods. After a while, Elizabeth noticed the hero still standing there, glaring at her, and asked what he wanted in return, showing intention to repay him for the food in any way possible. The boy became a bit embarrassed and simply said that his wish was finding a way for a demon queen and a hero to coexist in one place. Elizabeth couldn't help but think that this must be the boy's true intention, to use her as a subject for his research and later abuse her like a tool. Leing, blissfully unaware of Elizabeth's thoughts, tried his best to not be her enemy and suggested serving her food daily, hoping to change her perception of him. However, Elizabeth's misunderstanding remained unchanged, which frustrated her to no end. She believed that the hero was saying this to trick her and make her feel ashamed as the Queen of Demons, asserting his dominance. Queen Elizabeth didn't want to continue thinking about it and simply said, "Never mind, forget about it." But she didn't exactly clarify what she meant by that, leaving Leing disappointed and thinking that the Queen's only intention was still to take his life. Suddenly, Elizabeth started climbing up the bed, a mix of curiosity and confusion filling Leing's mind. She shouted, "Listen to me, hero!" Leing seemed surprised, either by seeing something specific under Elizabeth's clothes or her sudden action. The Demon Queen took on a serious expression and said, "I accepted all of your conditions, human, but not because I'm afraid of you. I only doing this in order to pursue the pinnacle of strength." Meanwhile, Leing couldn't figure out why even the Demon Queen should fear him in the first place when he considered her much stronger than himself. However, Elizabeth showed a hint of her terrifying side to Leing, making sure MC didn't underestimate her power, as he was already aware of it. She mentioned that if she found herself in danger, she would sacrifice everything to change the situation, her determination evident on her face. The main character was horrified to see this side of Elizabeth again, but assured her that he understood what she was trying to say. Slowly, the queen's anger subsided as she saw Leing in that situation. She even said, "If you want to research, feel free to come over." We don't quite understand what she meant by that. Just Leing got surprised to see one of his wishes had already been granted. But in return, the queen requested a delicious meal, if there was anything left. That night, everything passed secretly without showing us any details. And not only that night, but a whole year passed. The scene shifts where someone was chopping the woods, and as you might guess, it was the MC. Leing was chopping wood with the legendary sword. Perhaps it was sharper than his old axe, or maybe he couldn't find his axe anyway. He was lost in deep thoughts about how things had become so complicated recently. The system had broken, and the queen had arrived, making the places around the village no longer safe. Weird and dangerous monsters appearing near the village, which concerned him greatly. After finishing with the last piece of wood, he felt a small sense of relief knowing that the presence of the demon queen would keep the monsters from entering the village. He fervently wished for Queen Elizabeth to stay with him forever. However, his thoughts were shattered when the queen suddenly shouted, "Leing, it's lunchtime! Why my food isn't ready yet? Do you have death wish?" Once again, the poor MC found himself in another kind of trouble, a wave of frustration washing over him. It seems like Leing knew only this way, to keep the queen around the village for protection against other things. Meanwhile, the queen was lying on sofa and watching lovely, dovely action movies. The weight gain of the queen after a year had left her looking completely different. At first glance, I thought she had become pregnant, her belly protruding slightly. However, it turned out that she had simply gained weight from indulging in MC's food. In my eyes, she still retained her inherent cuteness, but she had undeniably doubled in size compared to last year. As the queen lounged on the couch, engrossed in her beloved action movies, snacking on some treats, she longed for something more interesting to capture her attention on TV. Just then, Leing entered the sitting room with lunch in hand, diligently following the queen's previous order. Aware of the queen's difficulty in getting up after indulging in a hearty meal, Leing patiently waited for her. The queen twirled her dainty hands in a circular motion, and to my surprise, small, adorable wings emerged from her back, distinctly different from the wings she had possessed the previous year. Nevertheless, she struggled to float towards Leing, resembling more of a balloon gently drifting through the air than the graceful flight of a queen. Upon her arrival, she immediately began to blame Leing, questioning why she gained weight every time she consumed his food and suspecting some sort of poison in it. Elizabeth, realizing that even though she knew the food might be harmful, she couldn't resist its delicious allure, felt a twinge of frustration. The boy, perceptive to Queen Elizabeth's thoughts, attempted to provide her with some information. He explained that if she continued to indulge in these addictive chips, she would undoubtedly accumulate fat. The mere mention of the word fat from Leing's lips caused Elizabeth to glance at herself and finally comprehend his meaning. As she touched her belly, a sense of urgency washed over her, and she resolved to do something about her weight gain. With a simple movement of her finger, she activated her deep-sea magic, and her body began to emit a powerful demonic energy. In a matter of seconds, her figure transformed back into the hot and alluring Elizabeth we had known, the epitome of a waifu. Eager to flaunt her newfound power, she declared, "I'm sorry, but all the accumulated fat in my body has been converted into magic power." Leing's eyes widened in astonishment, unaware that she possessed this additional ability to harness her magic in such a way. Elizabeth, feeling a sense of disappointment in Leing's expression, taunted him. "Another one of your tricks foiled by me. How do you feel now?" However, MC had no desire to engage in an argument, as everything had ultimately turned out in his favor. He simply invited the queen to enjoy their lunch together and brushed off the entire incident. The Queen of Demons found herself face to face with her favorite food, perfectly tailored to her tastes. Without hesitation, she began to devour the meal as if she hadn't eaten in centuries. The sight of her insatiable appetite slightly disappointed the boy, but he knew he had to accept it for the time being. "If it's not enough, I can make more," he offered. Yet, from Elizabeth's perspective, everything appeared entirely different. She believed that Leing regarded her as a weak pet, akin to a pig being fattened up for slaughter at the opportune moment. This thought ignited anger within her, causing her to angrily strike the table. Meanwhile, MC attempted to make amends by bringing out some dessert after lunch. Unbeknownst to him, his actions only fueled her anger further, as she perceived them as treating her like a mere gluttonous pig, solely interested in food. Curiously, it seemed that the boy had a refrigerator in this world, and also we saw he had TV earlier. I couldn't help but wonder how he managed to obtain electricity to power these modern conveniences. But such trivialities were momentarily let's set this matter aside. He picked up Elizabeth's most cherished pudding in an attempt to mend their relationship. As soon as Elizabeth's eyes caught sight of the pudding, they sparkled with delight. Clearly, she adored it. The pudding in Leing's hand held more value to her in that moment than anything else. The demon queen leaped up with childlike enthusiasm, unable to contain her excitement at the prospect of indulging in her favorite treat. Observing this scene, Leing realized that the queen's weakness lay in her insatiable desire for certain foods, which made her more susceptible and easier to handle. Meanwhile, in another part of the forest, an old man and a young girl found themselves in a perilous situation, desperately fleeing from an unknown threat. 3 sinister creatures pursued them relentlessly. One of the creatures, with an evil-like appearance, leapt into the air and unleashed a devastating magical attack known as spatial tearing. In an instant, a few shadowy, sword-like projectiles hurtled towards the humans, leaving them in a state of utter helplessness. The humans knew that they were trapped, with no means of escape from the impending strike of the dark magic. The malevolent creature, adorned with a menacing mask, issued a command with a chillingly calm voice. "Pump!" Suddenly, an intricate web-like structure materialized from thin air, ensnaring the helpless humans within its grasp. The old man barely managed to free themselves from the chains of that insidious web-like magic. Beside him stood the young girl from before, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. It seems like the girl was his daughter. As the old man urged her to leave as he wants to buy time for her and begging her to find safety, tears streamed down her face, a testament to her love and refusal to abandon her father in his time of need. The old man pleaded, "I made a promise to your mother, to protect you no matter the cost." His words were tinged with both love and desperation, knowing that their very lives hung in the balance. However, his attention was abruptly diverted as one of the evil creatures raised its hand and conjured a mystical orb, brimming with the tormented souls of countless victims. In that moment, the old man realized that unless he acted swiftly, their fate was sealed. Summoning his last reserves of strength, the old man brandished his sword and sent forth powerful waves of energy, striking the orb with a mixture of disbelief and hope. Miraculously, the orb split it into half, along with its malevolent summoner. But to their horror, the shards were drawn towards another creature, merging with it in a macabre dance. The creature now towered before them, with 2 heads and an aura of dark power that sent shivers down their spines. Seeing an opening, the young girl, who possessed a natural affinity for archery, drew her magical arrows and aimed them at the creature. However, to her dismay, the arrows proved ineffective, unable to breach the creature's formidable defenses. Realization dawned on the old man as he understood that these creatures were no ordinary foes. They were agents of the feared Dark Guild, practitioners of forbidden arts. Undeterred, the old man made one final attempt to persuade his daughter to flee from this treacherous battleground. The creature, sensing their vulnerability, prepared to strike once more, abandoning its reliance on magic and launching itself towards them with unparalleled speed. The impact was devastating, the ground trembling beneath their feet as the old man barely managed to raise his sword in a futile attempt to defend against the creature's onslaught. The blow was merciless, sending the old man hurtling through the air. his body colliding with a massive rock that jutted out from the ground. Bones shattered, pain searing through his entire being, but still he did not yield. The young girl, witnessing her father's broken form, was filled with a mixture of terror and concern. She knew that time was running out, and their chances of survival grew slimmer with each passing moment. The merged creature, now an abomination of twisted power, loomed before them, and the other one came after it, but jumped on top of the doubled creature and started to mixing same as last one. Now its presence suffocating. The size of it got 10 times bigger than before. It emitted a thunderous roar, a sound that reverberated in the girl's very soul, causing her to tremble with fear. She could no longer deny the grim reality of their situation. They were at the mercy of this monstrous entity. It was then that a tremendous force descended from above, crashing onto the creature with an earth-shattering impact. Through the haze of dust and debris, the girl's eyes widened in astonishment as she beheld a sight beyond comprehension. A colossal figure, standing at a towering height of 150 meters, emerged from the chaos, the Lord of Mammoths. Its majestic presence filled her with awe, but obscured from her view was a castle-like structure perched atop its head. As the dust settled, an immortal frog emerged from the castle, emitting a resounding ribbit that echoed through the air. The immortal frog suddenly said, "Big brother, the danger had been vanquished. Now what we do with those harmless humans? And if you watch carefully, there's a small doghouse-like also on top of the immortal frog's head. It seemed like it was talking with who was living there and not to the mammoth." Then something small came out of the house. Surprising, it was same loyal robotic companion as Wang Kai. But this was no ordinary dog. It possessed the ability to even speak. With unwavering determination, it proclaimed, "Do not harm the humans. I will bring them to our master to determine their fate." That day passed without any further explanation. The young girl from before seemed to be having a hard time with nightmares, sleeping somewhere. Suddenly, she woke up and shouted, "Monster!" At first, her mind was so busy that she didn't even notice she had moved into a house. But as she came to her senses, she realized there were no evil-like creatures around, and soon after, the girl realized she was lying in a bed in an unfamiliar place. The girl wondered how she got there and where her dad was. All of a sudden, she remembered what had happened and became concerned about her father's health. She thought that maybe his injuries were too deep, that no one could save him. Immediately, she stood up from the bed and ran towards the entrance door. Without hesitation, she opened the door and called out, "Dad!" But something surprised her. The old man was standing in the yard, not only looking entirely healthy, but there wasn't a trace of any wounds on his body. The girl was stunned for a moment and questioned what was going on. It seemed like the old man was trying to show off his physical appearance to Leing and the others, and our MC was already impressed. He couldn't help but cheer the old man for training hard and achieving such a fit body. Meanwhile, Wang Kai #2 was circling around the boy, sharing its happiness with him. But the dog's actions seemed to upset Queen Elizabeth a little bit, and as a result, she kicked poor Wang Kai, sending it flying like a ball. It didn't end there. She followed after it, and with a scary face said, "Who said you could bring riffraff back, you stupid dog?" The poor Wang Kai was horrified and whimpering from both fear and the effect of the kick. In the other side, Leing didn't pay any attention to them. The only thing he cared about was the old man's beautiful body. He touched old man's arm with a finger and said, "It's sturdy, it's sturdy." Seeing the boy so interested, the old man didn't hold back and showed his true body to Leing, but unfortunately, his clothes shattered in pieces. Now, Leing's eyes were glowing with amazement. For a moment, the old man thought he was in the Mr. Olympia festival and tried his best to amaze the boy even more. On the other side, the girl, still in shock, tried to ask her father why he was doing this and what had even happened to him. The old man just realized that his daughter had been watching him for a while and said, "I am just trying to please our saviors." Leing, watching the girl's shocked face, tried to explain everything. But Elizabeth showed up out of nowhere and stood between them. She didn't let the boy talk anymore and simply said, "Now that you're awake, get out." It seemed that their presence here made Elizabeth worry about her position, and that kick to Wang Kai was the result of it. She slowly approached the girl, warning her about staying here. She moved towards the girl and got so close that their chests collided, and that was the first step in Elizabeth showing who is superior around here. The young girl's name was Evil, and she was terrified by Elizabeth's aura and actions. Leing tried to interfere and control the situation, knowing that it must be another misunderstanding from Elizabeth. He suggested having tea inside, as they rarely had guests. Then the scene shifted to the inside of the house, where someone was pouring a cup of tea. They all gathered around a table, and Leing couldn't help but apologize for not having anything better to offer. Evil glared at the cup and asked her father if it was really the cup he had mentioned before, that could heal any injury immediately. Leing felt a little embarrassed and said, "It's just an exaggeration. I just gave you some cold well water before. Well, who knows what water he meant, anyway." Elizabeth, sitting near Leing, couldn't think of anything better than imagining the boy bring two weak humans as experimental tools. The thought that she should have been enough for his purposes annoyed her. Meanwhile, the old man started to explain what had happened the other day. He said that he was unconscious, but aware of what was happening around him. At that time, it seems like Leing was farming on his small farm when he suddenly heard his robotic dog's voice from far away. As it came closer, Leing noticed Wang Kai carrying two injured humans while it was singing a song. The boy immediately gave us some water. At that moment, I felt a sudden impressive energy overflowed in my body, healing my all injuries instantly. But for some reason, this only happened to me, and things were different for Evil. The old man looked at his precious daughter's face and assured Evil that they were alive now because of Mr. Leing. For a moment, Evil doubted if what her dad said was true. She believed if it was all true, she shouldn't drink that magnificent tea. Just like last time, the MC got embarrassed and impulsively invited them to drink it without considering anything else. They appreciated Leing's kindness and began to drink the tea. At the same time, they both felt something unexpected. A sudden, overflowing energy started to grow within their bodies like nothing they had ever experienced before. They found themselves immersed in a dream where they imagined lying in the middle of a beautiful wheat farm, free from worries, fears, and regrets. The overwhelming feeling of this dream washed over the old man's face. They couldn't help but wish for this feeling and dream to last forever. But it wasn't just a feeling. Both of them felt themselves leveling up and advancing, their abilities reaching new heights. Evil and her father were shocked by this sudden transformation. Additionally, Evil noticed that her hidden elven bloodline had also awakened, transforming her human ears into elvish ones. In a surprising moment of synchronicity, they uttered the same sentence. After witnessing the boundaries, nothing really matters anymore. This caught the boy, Leing, a little off guard. He couldn't help but wonder what they meant by witnessing the boundaries, but he chose not to interrupt their profound moment. Leing, understanding their desire for more of the tea, imagined that they wanted another cup. He kindly offered to pour them another serving, but the old man, still overcome with emotion, refused. He believed that they didn't deserve any more of it, thinking that what they had already experienced was beyond their wildest expectations. The boy, respecting the old man's wishes, didn't insist on it. Elizabeth sipped on the mysterious Leing's juice, her mind consumed with thoughts of secrecy and forbidden indulgence. She whispered to herself, ensuring that every edible item within reach belonged to her, and warning others not to even think about touching her stash. However, a pang of guilt washed over Leing, and he apologized once again for not having anything better to offer. The old man, known as Burs, and Evil, his daughter, exchanged knowing glances as they understood the underlying tension between Elizabeth and Leing. It was a well-known fact that wives held the dominant role in households, and Elizabeth was no exception. In an attempt to shift the atmosphere, MC decided to break the silence and asked Uncle Burs about the details of the attack they had endured. From that moment on, the young boy affectionately referred to Burs as Uncle Burs. Nonetheless, Burs gathered his thoughts and began recounting the events, starting with the connection to Evil's elf bloodline. Evil, noticing her father's struggle to speak, took it upon herself to share the beginning of her own story. She revealed that her mother had been the saintess of the elf race, who fell in love with Burs and gave birth to her. However, due to the elven race's strict prohibition against intermarriage with other races, their family faced significant challenges. Leing briefly entertained the thought that the recent attack on them might have been carried out by the elves as a form of punishment. Queen Elizabeth, intrigued by their tales, couldn't help but interject with her own perspective. Dismissing the notion of any intermarriage bans between races, she stated that such restrictions had been abolished long ago when the Demon Queen unified the world. Unbeknownst to Burrs and Avil, Elizabeth herself was the Demon Queen, but she kept her true identity hidden for the time being. Burrs hesitated, feeling the weight of the story upon him, but ultimately, he mustered the courage to recount how he was forced to flee with Avil after her mother was forcefully taken back to the elves' Holy Land. The boy's curiosity piqued, and he couldn't help but imagine the rest of the tale. Sensing this, Burrs revealed that the elves had pardoned them due to his wife's sacrifice. He further explained that the recent attack had been orchestrated by envoys of a dark guild from the demon realm. Upon hearing the mention of the demon realm, MC cast a curious glance at Queen Elizabeth, wondering if she had any knowledge of it. Simultaneously, Elizabeth, under the weight of their intense scrutiny, felt a secret rage building within her. She rose from her seat, intent on punishing the boy for speaking of matters he knew nothing about. MC, realizing the danger he was in, immediately apologized to defuse the situation before it worsened. Elizabeth's anger subsided momentarily, and she reluctantly resumed her seat. As the Demon Queen, Elizabeth was unaware of the activities of the Dark Guild or their purpose in capturing elves. Seeking answers, she turned to Uncle Burrs, hoping he could shed some light on the matter. Burrs explained that the Dark Guild was infamous for conducting mysterious human experiments, with their ultimate goal being the resurrection of the Demon Queen Elizabeth, who had once ruled the world. It seems like they were interested only in elves for some reason, and then Evil mentioned that they had pursued her even when her elven heritage remained hidden. Leping's gaze shifted towards Queen Elizabeth again, silently blaming her for the troubles caused by the Dark Guild, although he refrained from vocalizing his thoughts. Elizabeth, discerning the meaning behind Leping's glare, decided to teach him a valuable lesson. Once again, MC found himself in a precarious situation, forced to apologize sincerely. However, he couldn't help but realize that the Demon Queen had been with him all along, suggesting that she may not be responsible for the Dark Guild's actions. Evil and Burrs, overhearing their conversation, were left wondering about the true nature of their discussion. Seeking clarification, Elizabeth inquired about how Burrs knew that the Demon Queen Elizabeth was dead. To her surprise, the old man received a shocked expression in response. "Isn't she?" Burrs questioned, explaining that Queen Elizabeth had been missing for the past 500 years. Leping, taken aback, calculated that it had only been a year since Queen Elizabeth had been living with him. The disparity in timelines left him perplexed. Nonetheless, Elizabeth remained composed and asked Avil and Burrs about the rumors surrounding the Demon Queen's demise. Avil shared her knowledge, stating that according to literature, the Demon Queen Elizabeth was killed by legendary hero. Burrs continued to recount the epic battle that had unfolded between the Queen of Devils and the legendary hero. It had lasted for an entire month, and in the end, the hero had made the ultimate sacrifice to protect the world, perishing alongside the evil devil Queen Elizabeth. However, referring to the Queen as an evil devil queen hadn't been the wisest choice. Her glare sent shivers down their spines, as if they had entered the realm of the dead, knowing their lives hung by a thread. Both Burrs and Avil were horrified, unable to comprehend the immense power that had made them feel such fear. Seeing their fear, Queen Elizabeth ceased her torment and declared, "The rumors are false." The pair, already scared out of their wits, dared not argue any longer and immediately agreed with Elizabeth's assessment. Just when they thought they had reached a resolution, Leping, the mysterious figure in their midst, confirmed Elizabeth's words and revealed himself as the legendary hero they had mentioned before. This revelation left Avil and Burrs at a loss for how to react. Whether with fear, shock, or amazement, their emotions seemed to blend together into one bewildered expression. Leping hesitated for a moment, unsure how to introduce Elizabeth to the others. He closed his eyes momentarily, then mustered the courage to say, "She is the queen of demons you spoke of, Elizabeth." The impact of this truth proved too much for Avil and Burrs to bear. They immediately passed out, blood splattering from their noses as if their brains had crashed under the weight of accepting this overwhelming information. Meanwhile, Elizabeth observed their overreaction with a mix of annoyance and hurt. She couldn't help but imagine that Leing had orchestrated this situation to humiliate her, using their adventures as fuel for yet another misunderstanding. Unable to contain her anger any longer, she struck the table, jolting the humans back to their senses. With a heavy heart, she left the gathering, stating, "I won't entertain you any longer." Leing and Burrs trembled, terrified of provoking the wrath of the Demon Queen. As she made her way out, Elizabeth couldn't help but replay the scene in her mind, imagining Leing, who's using their knowledge to mock and humiliate her. She muttered to herself, "Stinky Leing, how dare you humiliate me?" With that, she left the house, nearly destroying it in her rage as she slammed the door shut. Once Elizabeth had left the building, Uncle Burrs released a breath he hadn't even realized he was holding. It was as if he hadn't dared to breathe freely in the presence of the Demon Queen. After a moment of calming their nerves, Burrs turned to Leing and asked about his plans for dealing with their current predicament. Still in shock himself, Leing couldn't provide a straightforward answer and simply said, "Let's calm down for now." However, something else weighed heavily on his mind. He had come to realize that time outside the village was passing much faster since he had broken the system and barrier time. It was a pressing concern that needed to be addressed. With the party over and nightfall upon them, Evel and her father retired to their guest room, attempting to sleep after such a bizarre day. However, Evel's appearance was disheveled, her terror preventing her from finding any respite. The truth about the Demon Queen, Elizabeth, who had fallen in love with the legendary hero, weighed heavily on her. The thought that the hero might aid Elizabeth in silencing them once he learned the truth was beyond her limits to bear. Uncle Burrs, on the other hand, remained relatively calm, doing his best to comfort his daughter. He knew their lives were now entwined with Leing's, and the challenges they would face were far from ordinary. As they lay there, consumed by their thoughts, suddenly someone entered the room. It appeared to be Leing, who had overheard their conversation and come to check on them. However, his presence in the darkness startled them, causing their hearts to race with fear. But to their surprise, he had only come to play cards as he couldn't sleep, just like them. Uncle Burrs was confused as he knew nothing about the game, but he felt relieved inside knowing it was just a game and their lives is safe for now. They lit a candle to help them see in the dimly lit room. However, Leing had electricity for modern appliances like a TV and refrigerator. Probably he should have the electricity for the light also. So why did he even need a candle? Perhaps he didn't want to wake up Elizabeth. Regardless, they all gathered in the middle of the room as MC explained the rules of the card game. He asked if they understood the rules correctly, and both of them nodded in affirmation. However, they didn't view this as a simple game. They saw it as a test with their lives on the line. Leing's actions always led others to misunderstand him. He smiled and began to deal the cards, signaling the start of the game. Within minutes, Evel struggled to even ask the name of the game. Just by looking at the cards, she noticed a sinister aura emanating from them. MC found himself unable to remember the name either. He pondered to find a suitable name, considering that landlord would be difficult for Evel and Burrs to understand. Suddenly, an idea struck him, and he declared, "It's Dragon Fight." Unable to come up with a better name given the circumstances, both Evel and Burrs couldn't help but feel terrified upon hearing it. It seemed as if Queen Elizabeth was using advanced magic to secretly spy on them, and even she was curious about the name of the game. She observed them invisibly, wondering about Leing's main purpose in playing this dragon fight game. Leing tried to simplify the concept by explaining that the game was about two brave heroes fighting a dragon. He then clarified that they could choose the heroes through the cards he drew. Uncle Burrs and his daughter exchanged secretive glances, knowing that this was a test they couldn't escape. In their eyes, Leing was doing everything in his power to unsettle them. However, without further argument, the boy dealt the cards and picked up his own. He instructed the others to do the same. As the old man examined his cards, he calmly asked Evel to do the same. The young girl, already anxious from just looking at the cards, tentatively reached out to pick them up. However, as soon as they touched their cards, they felt as if they were transported to another secret realm, where escape was impossible. Evil felt a sudden pressure on her body, realizing that all her powers had been drained just by touching the cards. She looked at her dad and apologized for not being able to do her best. But as always, Uncle Burrs remained calm and reassured Evil that everything would be fine. Meanwhile, Leing, in his peaceful state of mind, arranged his cards, contemplating why they weren't good enough. He asked if anyone wanted to be the dragon, and both Burrs and Evil quickly responded, "No, we don't want to be the dragon." Despite having better cards than Leing, they lacked confidence in their skills. MC, however, was more self-assured in his abilities in the game. He asked them once again if they were sure about not wanting to be the dragon. Their answer remained unchanged. MC didn't hold back, stating that he wouldn't be polite due to their choice, and he laid his card on the ground, revealing the cards on each one simultaneously. Things didn't turn out the way he had hoped, and he felt a bit disappointed. However, Uncle Burrs and Evil trembled, believing that their performance had dissatisfied the legendary hero. In reality, it was nothing like that, and they continued playing. The old man realized that as long as they passed any cards the hero spared, their lives would be spared as well. So he didn't hesitate too much when choosing a card. But as soon as he picked a jack card to pass, he felt a sudden, withering sensation within his body. Not only did the jack card herald a whirlwind of unimaginable power, but everything that followed seemed to unleash a storm of otherworldly sights, visible only to them. Picture this: a colossal dragon emerging from the very essence of the cards, hell-bent on punishing them for no apparent reason. You'd think they'd be terrified, right? Yup, actually they did. But hold on tight, because things didn't quite go according to plan. Sometimes waves of destruction, capable of tearing the sky asunder, surged forth and devoured them. But let me tell you, it went beyond any figment of their imagination. They felt the full force of these punishments as if they were happening in real bloody life. Sometimes, with sheer grit and determination, they found the courage to resist the legendary hero's wrath. Yet the epic finale was sealed in fate the moment our MC revealed not one, but two jack cards simultaneously. Oh, the realm itself trembled in anticipation, as if something far more terrifying was about to manifest, and lo and behold, it did. A malevolent entity unlike anything they had ever seen emerged, making the dragon look like child's play. This jack-evil creature was larger than life itself, its face a twisted visage of horror that could haunt your darkest nightmares. Now let's not forget the poor old man and Evil who, bless their trembling souls, nearly emptied their bladder at the mere sight of this abomination. This time it wasn't an illusion. Leing, in a stroke of fate or folly, had unwittingly summoned the Supreme Clown King himself without knowing what trouble he's getting others into. With bated breath, the Clown King extended its wicked intentions to punish Burrs and Evil, aiming to rain down a ruthless reckoning upon them. But wait, hold on a damn minute. Something caught its attention, diverting its bloodthirsty gaze. Can you believe it? The creature sensed the unseen presence of Queen Elizabeth, oh, the mighty demon queen herself. Even though she had no part in this twisted game, the clown was fixated on her, completely ignoring the others in the process. It hungered for her destruction, the foolhardy bastard. With grace, Elizabeth mustered every ounce of her power to face the looming danger. Meanwhile, the old man, poor chap, couldn't bear the overwhelming pressure of the atmosphere, feeling his life force deplete rapidly. In an act of desperation, he revealed his cards to Leing, drawing the boy's concern amidst the chaos. Peering through the chaos, Leing's eyes caught a glimpse of something extraordinary. Uncle Burrs, the sly fox, held not one, not two, but a mind-boggling 4 kings in his hand. The game was his for the taking, a victory awaiting him without any hindrance. And oh boy, did the gears in Leing's head start turning. Realizing the old man's hidden prowess, our quick-witted hero wasted no time. He swiftly gathered all the cards, convinced that this old-timer had purposefully laid the path to triumph for him. But let me tell you this, the Clown King's meltdown was fast approaching, even faster than you could say, shit. As the last card made its exit from Leing's grasp, the supreme bastard vanished into nothingness, leaving nothing but questions behind. Leing, with a tinge of disappointment etched on his face, uttered, "Well, that was one hell of a ride. Now rest up, my friends." Evil and the old man, still shook to their core, silently contemplated the enigmatic nature of the legendary hero. They were left astounded, wondering if they would ever truly understand his motives. And let's not forget about Queen Elizabeth, who felt a mixture of offense and resentment at being treated like a pawn in a game meant for mortals. The notion of the malicious clown king targeting her only fueled her ire further. In the village yard, 4 figures stand tall, engaged in intense conversation. Uncle Burrs and his dearest Evel, their resolve now solid, had made up their minds. They yearned to bid this place farewell and depart with urgency. The old man, brimming with gratitude, graciously bowed before Leing, expressing his heartfelt appreciation for the hero's kindness. He made a solemn promise to safeguard the secret of coexistence between the legendary hero and the Demon Queen, ensuring it would remain protected beyond the village's borders. Evil, too, chimed in with words of thanks to Leing, her voice filled with genuine gratitude for the additional gift bestowed upon them. MC couldn't bear to offer them only a simple cup of tea as a token of his appreciation. Daringly, Leing approached the old man, extending his hand for a handshake. But lo and behold, he didn't stop there. With an air of mystery and anticipation, Leing discreetly placed something into the old man's trembling hand, and it was the cards themselves. Realizing his own limitations in the realm of card games, Leing recognized the old man's prowess and bestowed upon him the tools necessary to excel. As they were about to exchange pleasantries and goodbyes, an unexpected interruption pierced the air. Queen Elizabeth always couldn't hold her impatience any longer. "Hey!" she exclaimed, her voice cutting through the moment. The old man's heart nearly leapt out of his chest at the sound. Leaning in, Elizabeth whispered with urgency, her words a secret bond between them. "Hurry up and get out of here," she urged, ensuring that Leing wouldn't overhear her instructions. And just like that, Evel and Burrs vanished into the horizon, disappearing in a blur of speed that would make Roadrunner envious. The legendary Mig. As they raced away, little Leing couldn't help but feel a twinge of longing, a hint of sadness at the sudden departure of his newfound friends. However, duty called, and Queen Elizabeth reminded him to get back inside as soon as possible and make the lunch for her as usual. As the old man bolted with the speed of a fucking lightning bolt, faster than Usain Bolt on steroids, he refused to glance back, never once doubting if he had escaped far enough from the clutches of danger. However, poor Evel couldn't keep up the pace any longer and damn near begged Uncle Burrs to give him a break. And, well, good old Burrs actually did it, his terrifying gasps for air echoing through the air. Suddenly, the memories of the past night came flooding back to him. First, they played a deadly game with the legendary hero, and then they faced the menacing threat of Demon Queen Elizabeth. It seems like in last night, as they wanted to rest in peace after the game, Queen Elizabeth herself paid them a not-so-friendly visit, commanding them to leave this place as soon as possible. The woman even had the audacity to give them a fucking ultimatum and unleash a forbidden curse, threatening them with immediate beheading if they dared to breathe a word about the legendary hero or her royal highness anywhere outside the village. Uncle Burrs and Evel could only reply with trembling voices, "Yes, Your Majesty." Shit got real, my friend. In the present, the old man remained lost in his memories, while Evel caught a whiff of something familiar in the air. With a quick glance around, the old man realized they had truly distanced themselves from the village, although he couldn't quite pinpoint their exact location just yet. Meanwhile, Wang Kai No. 2 kept an eye on them, making sure they reached safety at lightning speed. Oh, and let me tell you, that wasn't the old man running like a maniac. It was Wang Kai pushing them along like a goddamn rocket. But here's the catch. They ended up back at the same cursed spot where the Apostles of the Dark Guild attacked them, the very same spot where their mangled corpses still lay like a fucked-up decoration in the boss mammoth's footprint. It didn't take long for the old man to realize that these high-level demons might not be the only ones coming for them, so it's better to hightail it back to town pronto. Meanwhile, Wang Kai sensed danger brewing nearby, but the robotic dog didn't care at all, as anything comes next probably was much better than facing the Queen of Demons herself, and then opened a portal and attempted to enter it playfully. Then the dog did it. A little further, this time, the old man noticed their presence also, but it wasn't just 3 enemies like before. But more than 10 high-level demons materialized out of nowhere, with one towering above the rest like a goddamn boss, and those screeching ghostly creatures were under its god-forsaken command. I'll bet my limited edition body pillow that they were all members of the Dark Guild, hungry for evil's sweet ass. Uncle Burrs and his daughter Evil looked upon these menacing foes, realizing the gaping chasm in strength between them and the Dark Guild apostles. The situation was so goddamn hopeless that Evil even contemplated abandoning ship and told Burrs to save himself. But the old man wasn't about to leave his beloved daughter behind. Hell to the fucking no. And then Burrs went full badass mode. The crafty old man pulled out these cards that Leing had given him. And let me tell you, hell started to get real. Energy crackled all around them, electrifying the air around them. Unbelievably, the ghostly creatures started perishing left, right, and center. A few of them even got pushed back. Meanwhile, their boss looked like it had just seen a damn ghost. It didn't anticipate the power behind those energy. Uncle Burrs, sensing the urgency of the situation, sought to fuel Evil's indomitable spirit by invoking her mother's legacy, forcing her to comprehend that running away would only serve to prolong their conflict with the nefarious Dark Guild. Praise be to the almighty Leing for bestowing upon them these mystical cards, without which their fate would surely have been sealed. The old man deftly produced each and every number 4 card, summoning forth a resplendent elf spirit with huge breasts. I mean, elongated ears, a sight to behold. In that fleeting moment, Evil found herself transfixed by the spirit's breasts, goddamn breathtaking beauty, so reminiscent of her beloved mother. Alas, the summoned spirit remained oblivious to Evil's presence. Burrs, harnessing the power of the cards, issued an authoritative command for the spirit to employ her lethal power against their diabolical foes. And so, without hesitation, the spirit summoned her celestial bow, taking careful aim at the malevolent creatures and releasing her arrow with unwavering precision. The titanic arrow hurtled through the air like a celestial bolt, mercilessly carving a path of destruction upon the land. Caught off guard, their assailants found themselves scattered, a few doomed to meet their demise in the blink of an eye. However, the boss, brimming with misplaced confidence, deftly caught the arrow in his grip. Yet the boss soon realized his grave miscalculation, as the arrow's sheer might overwhelmed his weakened defenses. No longer able to thwart its lethal advance, the arrow effortlessly cleaved through his wretched form, beheading the very embodiment of their adversary. With the immediate threat vanquished, the old man reverently returned the cards to their sanctified resting place, bidding farewell to the summoned spirit as she faded silently into the ether. However, the exertion of utilizing these cards exacted a heavy toll upon the elderly warrior, draining his vitality until he staggered, wearied and fatigued, prostrating himself upon the ground as exhaustion claimed his weary form. As he gathered his breath amidst the lingering traces of battle, his gaze fixated upon a remarkable sight, an indelible mark etched upon the earth, an enduring testament to the awe-inspiring power of the summoned spirit, exceeding even the old man's wildest expectations. And so, 1 week has passed without any more information about Uncle Burrs and Evil, and we find our MC sitting under the comforting shade of a tree with 3 slices of mouth-watering watermelon in front of him. Damn, talk about a refreshing treat. As he savors the deliciousness, he can't help but feel that something is missing. He longs for the company of Elizabeth, the badass demon queen, Burrs the fierce warrior, and Evil the seductive elf archer. But those troublemakers left the village a week ago, leaving him feeling all alone. Suddenly there's a damn explosion nearby. Holy shit, what's going on? And who should appear out of thin air but Elizabeth, holding Leing's special drink, looking stunning as ever. She senses that something's off with her partner in crime and asks him why he's feeling blue. The MC, not one to be surprised by Elizabeth's dramatic entrances, just sighs and spills the tea. I wanted to leave this village and witness something exciting, but forget it, he says. Queen Elizabeth, seizing the damn opportunity to show off her kingdom to the legendary hero, accepts without a second thought. What a boss move. The MC's amazed because it's his chance to see the world beyond his boring village. Elizabeth chugs down some more of that delicious drink of hers and orders the MC to change his clothes and get ready as soon as possible. And would you believe it? Both of them actually dress up like a damn power couple. Who saw that coming? And then Elizabeth praises the MC's sewing and cooking skills again because, honey, he made those clothes all by himself. LOL, talk about main character. While they're getting ready, that loyal pup Wang Kai is giving them the puppy eyes. He's either admiring their new looks or begging them to take him along. With a flick of her finger, Elizabeth opens a portal gate and urges the MC to take the plunge. Apparently, it'll lead them to the nearest town. Our boy Leing is shook by this display of power as per usual. But before they venture forth, Leing stops Elizabeth in her tracks. Oh boy, he's got some questions to ask. Trembling like a leaf, the MC fires off 3 questions that have been eating away at his soul. First, he's worried that Elizabeth will leave him alone once they leave the village. Second, he wants Lizzie to control her damn emotions a bit more. And third, he asks her to keep it low-key. But here's the kicker. Elizabeth misunderstands every single damn question. Classic. Instead of assuring him that she won't leave without his permission, she takes it as a dig that he's looking down on her. Whoa, girl, calm your fiery presence. Anyway, she agrees to follow his requests, even though she didn't really get them right. Leing feels a glimmer of hope, but still he's not completely at ease. After all, if Elizabeth leaves the village and doesn't return, there are horrible, monstrous baddies just waiting to devour him and everything he loves. But fear not. Elizabeth reassures him that she won't leave until she officially kicks his heroic ass. Damn, that's commitment for you. Hearing her words, Leing can't help but feel a surge of happiness in his chest. This hot and cold dynamic is sure keeping things interesting. Oh, but hold up. Elizabeth has a request that's enough to scare the crap out of our MC. She comes closer, wearing a serious expression, and whispers that he must promise to make... The scene shifts to her lips, and then she continues, super deluxe assorted fruit pudding. Well, holy cow, that's a relief. I felt she's going to ask for something more like you know better anyway. Leing, who's been making pudding for Elizabeth all this damn time, is both confused and relieved. He wonders why she's asking for something she always gets. Elizabeth notices his puzzled expression and gets back to the scene, telling him, is there a problem with this request? The poor boy just accepts her request because, well, what other choice does he have? And with that, they leave poor Wang Kai number 2 all by its lonesome. Talk about a heartbreaker. As soon as the MC steps into the portal, he feels like he's damn walking in the sky, surrounded by a kaleidoscope of lights. But the feeling doesn't last long, because before he knows it, he's smack dab in the middle of the nearest town, and boy, found it different from what he imagined. Boaster Town wasn't as he had imagined. The town was as grand and magnificent as the capital itself. It was a place where all kinds of creatures coexisted harmoniously. This was the first time our legendary hero had encountered such a bustling city since being summoned to this world, and it filled him with a sense of excitement and curiosity. As he took in the sights, he came across a small equipment shop and eagerly tried to show it to Elizabeth. Then they stumbled upon a bustling butchery, and again he tried to show it to Elizabeth. Leing couldn't resist the urge to explore every shop he came across, playfully and eagerly. However, Queen Elizabeth had a different perspective. After passing 500 long years out of village, she found the town as boring as ever, believing that not much had changed. Despite her opinion, the calm and orderly atmosphere amazed the young boy. As the queen observed Leing's astonishment, she couldn't help but speak proudly.
Well, that's because I, Queen Elizabeth, laid a strong foundation during my rule.
She continued to boast, taking credit for the peace that had prevailed for centuries. She wanted to ensure that Leing understood her significance in saving the world, not the fake, legendary hero. However, to her surprise, she realized that Leing had vanished, and she had been speaking to herself all along. It seemed that the boy had found something else that had piqued his interest. Leing had stumbled upon a small girl selling beautifully crafted teddies. The craftsmanship impressed him, and he couldn't help but inquire if she had made them herself. The girl proudly declared that she had indeed created them all. However, out of nowhere, a pig-like creature appeared and arrogantly exclaimed,
"Who gave you permission to set up a stall here?"
In no time, the pig destroyed the girl's stall with a swift kick. The pig then grabbed the poor girl's arm, asserting,
"You stinky girl! Your church owes my gang protection money! How dare you set up a stall here?
It became apparent that the girl and the other children surrounding her were orphans from the church, just like her. Despite witnessing the unfolding scene, they cried and trembled in fear. The pig-like creature tightened its grip on the girl's shoulder, attempting to intimidate her further. However, the girl, displaying unexpected courage, retorted,
"You never protected us. Why should we pay you?"
This statement only infuriated the pig further, who warned that survival in this town came at a price. Nevertheless, the girl remained resolute, refusing to accept the beast's words. Leing, still processing the situation alongside the other onlookers, could no longer stand idly by. After a moment, he couldn't resist intervening in the bullying, saying, "Stop it." The pig glanced around, trying to identify the one who dared to interfere in his affairs. Then, the piggy man noticed the boy standing there, trembling with fear and regret for his impulsive actions. Elizabeth stood close to him, taking a brief glance at Leing before whispering,
Mind your own business, boy.
Leing, feeling hopeless, pleaded for Elizabeth's help to escape the trouble, momentarily forgetting his own power. The queen, however, had no intention of helping him, and merely wanted to see how the legendary hero would handle the situation. The piggy man grew even more agitated and demanded to know the boy's intentions for interfering, but not in a polite manner. Now our main character found himself in a precarious situation, desperately searching for a peaceful solution to extricate himself from this predicament. Suddenly, an idea struck him. He shouted, "Everyone, this pig-headed man is bullying a young girl. Come and condemn him." Unfortunately, his plan quickly unraveled as he turned to see the people behind him glaring at each other, indifferent to the unfolding events. The piggy man laughed at Leing, realizing that boy was a foreigner who knew nothing about his gang. He wanted to demonstrate his authority through his actions. Leing, either out of fear or a desire to avoid further trouble, suggested resolving the conflict through conversation, same as always. However, it became apparent that a peaceful resolution was unlikely. The piggy man sent two of his subordinates to punish and imprison not only Leing, but also the girl standing beside him. Little did they know, this was a grave mistake that would bring Elizabeth into the picture. Elizabeth smiled, as if she had been eagerly waiting for this situation to arise. Suddenly, the weather in the town changed dramatically, and a large, devilish face appeared in the sky, showcasing a glimpse of Elizabeth's immense power. The piggy man was horrified and released the girl, bewildered by the sudden shift in weather. His subordinates, equally terrified, couldn't help but gaze at the sky, realizing that they had no idea who they were truly messing with. In the meantime, Leing, fearing that Elizabeth might unleash her wrath upon them for such a minor transgression, did his best to calm her down. He quickly summoned a strong gust of wind, reminding the queen that the people involved were mere ordinary individuals who had no knowledge of her true identity. Eventually, his efforts paid off and Elizabeth began to relax. As the orphan girl observed the magnitude of Elizabeth's magical energy, even after her temper had subsided, she realized that the queen was no ordinary devil. The sight amazed her. It seemed that girl was the only one who could perceive the magical energy of Elizabeth. The foolish piggy man, witnessing the weather returning to normal, foolishly believed that it had merely been a passing rainstorm and that all was now forgotten. The piggy man trembled in fear at the sight of Queen Elizabeth, his voice quivering as he spoke.
Do you really want to stand up for these church orphans?
Despite feeling sorry for the man, our MC, Leing, remained steadfast in his desire to resolve the situation peacefully. He inquired about the amount of money that would satisfy the piggy man, who replied with a trembling voice,
It's 10 gold coins for a total of 2 months.
Elizabeth, slightly disappointed that such trouble had arisen over a mere 10 gold coins. MC discreetly moved closer to Queen Elizabeth. The boy whispered to her, "You must have a substantial amount of gold, Elizabeth, right? After all, she was the queen of a continent, so it was only natural for her to possess great wealth." In his peaceful demeanor, Leing asked Elizabeth to lend him the 10 gold coins, promising to repay her as soon as they returned by selling his farm's vegetables. However, Elizabeth disapproved of the idea of selling the vegetables, as everything on the farm belonged to her. She uttered something that left the boy dumbfounded. She declared that she hadn't brought even a single silver coin with her. The piggy man, frustrated, approached them, questioning whether they would pay the money or not. Ashamed, Leping apologized and informed the man that they did not have the funds. The piggy man, angered by what he perceived as a game being played on him, attempted to force them to pay, seemingly forgetting the events that had just unfolded. Suddenly, a bag of gold coins materialized out of thin air and struck the piggy man in the face. Initially, he thought someone was interfering and became even angrier, but he soon realized that it was a bag filled with gold coins. The scene shifted as a horse approached, carrying a warrior-like figure on top. He wasn't on top, actually, but attached to the horse. It was a centaur or something similar. With a serious expression, he declared,
"Stop harassing my friend and leave."
The piggy man recognized him immediately, realizing that the centaur was from a famous guild in town. He chose not to continue the argument and left, issuing a warning to Orphan Girl that the next encounter would be much different. After the piggy man departed, Leping quickly helped the poor girl to her feet, asking if she was all right. In response, the orphan girl expressed her gratitude to everyone for their help. Suddenly, Leping pulled out a bunch of bananas, intending to offer them to the centaur as a token of appreciation. However, the centaur had no intention of accepting the gesture. Instead, he glanced at Elizabeth and proposed that they all become partners in a venture, without singling out anyone in particular. The orphan girl couldn't help but wonder how she could contribute to this endeavor. The centaur invited them to follow him to a quieter location, where they could discuss the details further. Elizabeth, showing no interest in what the centaur guy wanted to ask or show them, caught Leping off guard. Lee wanted to showcase his gratitude to the centaur and tried to convince Elizabeth to at least hear him out. Meanwhile, the other orphan children from the church couldn't help but ask their older sister Annie if she was really going to join these new acquaintances. Annie reassured them that she would be back soon and instructed them to return to the church as quickly as possible. Not long after, they arrived at their destination, a tavern. The centaur took the lead, urging the others to stay close to him. The tavern was filled with all sorts of people who glared at them as the newcomers, wondering why they were there. An average human and an orc made an inappropriate comment, saying,
"Hey babe, the people around you look like trash. Want to come over instead?"
Leping felt a little offended but chose to ignore their remarks. However, Elizabeth couldn't contain her anger and wanted to kill the two men without mercy. The aura surrounding her frightened them to the core, and they quickly pretended they never said anything. Elizabeth turned her furious gaze towards Leping, blaming him for bringing her to such a terrible place. Leping had no answer for her and attempted to change the subject by pointing out that they had arrived at their destination. The centaur gently instructed them to follow him and led them into a room. As soon as he opened the door, he announced,
"I'm back!"
and 4 beautiful women came forward to greet him. Each one was more adorable than the last, and somehow all of them were that guy's wives. Leping was shocked to see that the centaur had built a harem with 4 wives, and he wondered how many more he might be hiding. The thought of how they managed their lovely-dovely relationships simultaneously overwhelmed his mind. After a short while, it seemed they had entered the room without any further trouble. Someone began pouring tea, not just for one person, but for all of them. They all sat around a large circular table. And then the centaur asked for permission to introduce his wives to their guests. First was Gasha, a shield warrior. Then there was Lolo, an assassin-type demi-human. Next to her was Glee, a human magician. And finally, there was Galia, an elven archer. Leping couldn't fathom how this centaur had managed to win the hearts of these lovely women. Elizabeth, true to her nature, grew impatient and demanded that the centaur get to the point and explain why he had brought them all the way there. However, Gasha, the centaur's warrior wife, didn't appreciate Elizabeth's attitude and found it annoying. Elizabeth, undeterred, retorted,
"That's how a queen talks. Do you have a problem with that?"
Not only did Gasha take offense, but the others also looked at Elizabeth with curiosity, wondering what she was talking about. They might have thought her mind was damaged, not knowing the true identity of Elizabeth. Elizabeth, displeased with their reactions, began whispering slowly,
If you insist on bringing destruction upon yourselves, then don't blame the queen.
Recognizing the dire situation, Leping came up with a final solution and offered it to Elizabeth. And you probably already know what it was. Of course, only a pudding could change the mood and temperament of a perpetually hungry girl so quickly. Just look at her excited face. Leping felt relieved that he had anticipated this situation and had prepared himself. He wanted to provide a clear explanation to prevent any misunderstandings. He declared that they were actually from a distant tribe, and Elizabeth was the queen of that tribe, while he served as one of her loyal subjects. Lolo realized that the reason behind Elizabeth's strange behavior must be her sheltered life as a princess who had never seen the outside world. Gilia chimed in, commenting on the coincidence of Elizabeth sharing the same name as the strongest demon queen. Leping attempted to silence them before Elizabeth grew angry again, but she was too engrossed in her pudding to pay attention to their discussion. The centaur grew tired of the chit-chat and decided it was time to discuss the purpose of their gathering, a treasure dungeon raid. Leping listened intently, but he had never heard of a treasure dungeon before and had no idea what it entailed. He discreetly asked the orphan girl if she had any knowledge about it. She began explaining everything she knew about treasure dungeons, but since you are likely already familiar with the concept, I will skip the lengthy and tedious explanation. The centaur explained that they needed at least 8 people to enter a treasure dungeon, which was why he had brought 3 of them here. Leping realized that the centaur had likely invited them to join solely to meet the required number, while the poor girl was counting everyone to see if she would be included in the group or not. She discovered that she was indeed the 8th member, although she seemed a bit dissatisfied. Leping glanced at the girl and wondered why she wasn't happy to enter a treasure dungeon with them, considering the potential wealth and treasures they could acquire for her and the church. However, the girl replied,
These kinds of dungeons are incredibly difficult and dangerous. As a low-level magician, my life would be in jeopardy.
Leping soon realized that he had no information about the dungeons or the level of magicians. Seeing their distress, the centaur stood up and assured them that he only needed their help to meet the required number, and they didn't need to worry about anything else. Gasha also informed them that her husband would handle everything single-handedly, and they wouldn't need to lift a finger. This was the reassurance the orphan girl had been waiting to hear, and she happily accepted their invitation to join the team. Leping, unsure of what Elizabeth wanted, decided to ask her directly if she truly wanted to join them. However, she was still happily indulging in her favorite pudding, so she simply shrugged and allowed Leping to make the decision. The centaur, already aware of Leping's answer, glared at his magician wife and requested something specific from her. Soon enough, she returned with a magical orb, a crystal ball that was unfamiliar to Leping. He couldn't help but wonder why they had brought such a thing. The centaur wasted no time and personally demonstrated the capabilities of the crystal ball. It appeared that the crystal ball could measure magical levels simply by touching it. The centaur's magical level was revealed to be 8,769, leaving Leping and the orphan girl shocked. Leping was amazed to witness such a thing for the first time, while the girl was astounded by the magnitude of the centaur's magical level. The centaur then invited them to try their luck and determine their own magical levels. The orphan girl stood up first and attempted to check her magical level. To her disbelief, she only registered a measly 300 levels, causing the centaur's wives to look down on her. At first glance, they didn't appear to be so cruel. The poor girl burst into tears as if she had just lost her parents and declared that she had already tried her best, but her level hadn't increased beyond that. Leping, the legendary hero, rose to his feet and attempted to discern his level of magical energy. With high hopes, he placed his hand on the crystal, but to his disappointment, nothing happened. The crystal displayed a stagnant 0 points, leaving our boy utterly disheartened. This piqued the centaur's curiosity, since even the lowest creatures in the world possessed more magical energy than that. Our boy's hopes were shattered, and he returned to his seat, consumed by disappointment. All he could think was how it was possible for him to have absolutely no magical energy. I empathize with him. Lolo, much like the orphan girl, looked down on him, questioning what he could possibly accomplish with such minimal magical energy. However, Leping refused to let his spirit waver and declared, "There is one thing I can do exceptionally well. I excel at farming." He then pulled out a bunch of bananas to demonstrate his proficiency. Unfortunately, the group of wives were disgusted and even more disappointed, considering him nothing more than a useless servant. The centaur boy was more curious about Elizabeth and asked her to demonstrate her magical level, just like Leping and the orphan girl. However, she was still engrossed in her pudding and showed no interest in participating. Leing tried to convince her to cooperate, but his attempts only ended up enraging her. She simply didn't want to interrupt her precious eating time, so she lazily placed her hand on the orb and stood up. At first, she seemed determined to showcase her immense power to show who's the real boss here. The crystal orb began glowing intensely, as if on the verge of exploding from the overflow of Elizabeth's magical energy. Everyone around the table couldn't even open their eyes, for fear of being blinded by the radiance. Our main character suddenly realized that if she continued on this path, her true identity as Queen Elizabeth, the strongest demon queen, would be exposed. He tried to secretly warn Elizabeth about it, but Elizabeth proved to be more cunning than he had anticipated. She was already aware of the situation, even though she was upset. Since this was their first time venturing outside the village and it meant a lot to Elizabeth, she decided not to spoil the mood. Everyone, except Leing, was stunned. None of them expected Elizabeth to handle the situation with such grace. Surprisingly, Elizabeth managed to control her magical level to just 8,768, 1 point lower than the centaur. The orphan girl was the first to notice that both Elizabeth and the centaur boy possessed the same level of magical energy. The wives were shocked to discover that the girl they had been joking about was just as strong as their husband. Leing wiped the sweat from his forehead, feeling relieved that everything had turned out without any further trouble. The only one who seemed genuinely happy, or perhaps pretending to be, was the centaur man. He congratulated Elizabeth on her strength and looked forward to clearing the dungeon with her help. With that problem resolved, the orphan kid became curious about their plan for clearing the treasure dungeon. The half-human didn't explain anything and simply asked his magician wife to proceed as they had planned. She pulled out a scroll from seemingly nowhere and activated it. It appeared to be a scroll of teleportation. In a matter of moments, a glowing circle materialized above them and, in less than a second, engulfed them all. Nothing remained but an empty room. They had been transported to their final destination, somewhere deep within the mountains. The main character's head spun, but his mind was consumed by the sheer awesomeness of the teleportation. Meanwhile, the orphan girl, as per usual, could sense the aura of everything, and the aura of the dungeon seemed to horrify her. In the other side, Elizabeth finished the last piece of her pudding and suddenly seemed to recognize something dangerous about their current location. The centaur man urged everyone not to delay the mission and gather to enter the dungeon. However, out of the blue, Elizabeth declared that she did not want to enter the dungeon and asked Leing to accompany her back home. The centaur wives couldn't bear to see Elizabeth change her mind at the last moment, and one by one they expressed their feelings, with even the elven wife threatening Elizabeth. Our queen did not provide a reason for her sudden change of heart, instead daring them to do something foolish. At that moment, the main character stepped in and asked everyone to remain calm. He clasped his hands together and put on a pleading face, doing his best to convince Elizabeth to enter the dungeon with him. The orphan kid didn't pay much attention to Leing and simply said,
Queen Elizabeth, the magical power inside the dungeon looks so similar to your own magical power. That's probably why you don't want to go there. I guess something dangerous must be lurking inside, right?
The main character couldn't help but wonder what she meant by that. Meanwhile, the centaur boy approached and rudely pushed Leing aside, showing his intention to talk to Elizabeth. He tried to appear cool and gentle, doing his best to convince her to trust him and let him take care of her. Elizabeth looked at him indifferently and passed by without answering his questions. That's exactly what he deserved for disrespecting my boy. She came towards Leing and explained that because it was actually their first time going out together and it felt like a date for her, she agreed to enter the dungeon just for once and then asked Leing to follow her. The centaur glared at them as they moved towards the entrance, feeling a sudden anger building up within him towards Elizabeth's behavior. Once they all gathered in front of the dungeon entrance gate, it started to open, and everyone moved inside. Leing and the orphan kid seemed more amazed than the others, since it was their first time experiencing something like this. Not long after they entered, the barrier of the dungeon began to close, making the boy wonder if they could leave if something happened. Elizabeth assured him that he couldn't leave as long as his magical power was lower than the one who built the barrier. Before long, they arrived in the middle of the dungeon, where numerous passages and different paths intertwined. The magician wife was overexcited, and she almost let slip something about their intention to acquire something specific, although she didn't reveal what they were truly after. The Gasha silenced her to prevent her from spoiling their plan. The only one who noticed what she had said was the orphan girl, and she became curious about it. She asked about the meaning behind the magician's words, but the elven girl swiftly changed the subject, not allowing the child to uncover their true intentions. Leing didn't hear the girl's conversation or didn't care much. He simply wondered which path they should take. Lolo had the same question but couldn't help but think that splitting up might be the better option. However, the half-human boy had already planned for this. He looked at his magical wife and asked her to perform the move. It seemed like those bastards had practiced this many times before. She raised her hand and summoned her magical staff, striking it on the ground. Multiple lights emanated from the staff, and each of them went into a different passageway, revealing what lay inside like a map. Upon witnessing this, the magician girl, Galia, felt proud of herself and asked her beloved husband to watch her carefully. Elizabeth's reaction, on the other hand, was more intriguing. She simply said,
Ignorant.
as if she was unimpressed by the magic. The map continued to expand, showing almost everything, including the location of each boss and treasure along the shortest routes. However, it seemed that using this magic was draining the girl's energy, causing her to fall to her knees. As the frustrated wife fumbled around, the centaur boy trotted over to check on her. He asked if she had found the right destination they were looking for. It seems like the poor girl couldn't find not only the destination, but couldn't even find the edge of the maze-like dungeon. The other girls were all like, "Holy cow, even Gilia's magic couldn't find the end of this dungeon, and that shit can apparently see everything within a frickin' 3-kilometer radius." Then, the last wife suggested splitting the group into smaller groups to tackle this mess. Meanwhile, Leing gave Elizabeth the stink eye and whispered, "You actually know where the heck we should go, don't you?" Elizabeth just smiled, like she knew some juicy secret. Turns out she was already know about this mind-bending maze and all its damn illusions. Using some secret move or whatever, the MC approached Queen Elizabeth and asked for her help. But did Elizabeth show any interest? Hell no. She just wanted to sit back and see what would happen next. Suddenly, the kiddo piped up and suggested going into the third cave, claiming it was the fastest way to reach their final goal. Queen Elizabeth couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at the kid, and Leing got all nosy, asking how she came up with that idea. And you know what she said? She had no reason. It was just a wild-ass guess. But actually, she did sense some magic energy coming from that cave. Gilia, on the other hand, couldn't sense anything, and she wasn't about to let a low-level mage like that kid spew nonsense without consequences. The poor girl got scared as hell, apologized and whatnot, but she was just stating her opinion. Gilia was determined to prove herself to that centaur boy and told him they should use that last cave because apparently the monsters in there were much weaker and fewer than other caves. So her husband, still unsure of what the heck to do, decides to ask everyone for their goddamn opinions. The demi-human wife is all like, "Yo, we should split up and take different routes." But the other wives are like, "Nah, fam, let's stick together and follow Gilia's suggestion." And Jalia, she's all like, "Trust me, motherfuckers. I'm doing my best to not disappoint my master." The centaur guy seems to be convinced and agrees to go where Gilia tells them to go. However, out of nowhere, the orphan girl stops them and is all like, "Choose any way except that one." And what does she do? She summons a magical puppet and sends that straight into the last cave where the magician wife was planning to force everyone to enter. And you know what the hell happens? Boom! Some terrifying giant mimic worm appears out of nowhere and devours the magical puppet. That thing was waiting there the whole damn time, ready to eat something for a long time. And of course, the MC pooped in his pants at the sight of this unexpected horror. But does Elizabeth give a damn? Not even a little bit. It seems like this ain't her first time seeing something like that. The demi-human wife glared at the Gilia and said, "Didn't you say that cave had the least damn monsters?" And looks like Galia misunderstood the situation and now she's furious that her husband won't trust her anymore. And what does the Queen of Demons do in all this chaos? She just casually moves her ass without caring about the others and asks Leing to come along. She's like, "Fuck y'all, do whatever you want." But the MC, bless his sorry ass, feels bad leaving the others behind. But hey, he's got no choice but to follow his queen. Now, the orphan kid has the decency to warn Elizabeth about the danger in that cave, but she pretended that she never heard the kid's voice, and Elizabeth just marches right toward the cave. Seeing this madness unfold, the demi-human girl asks her master to tell them what they should do. At first, the centaur boy was clueless, but after wasting some time for thinking, he decides to follow Elizabeth because he's already suspicious of her powers. As soon as they enter that damn cave, a scent fills the air, drifting to places it shouldn't. Will they be discovered by some mysterious creature lurking in the darkness? Let's see. Not long after venturing into the depths of the cave, they encountered a swarm of bat-like monsters. Although these creatures posed little threat to the centaur boy, his wives grew weary from the sheer number of bats, not their strength. The audacious MC and the orphan girl sought refuge behind Elizabeth, unwilling to leave their hiding spot. This behavior rather vexed Queen Elizabeth, witnessing the legendary hero act so poorly. Suddenly, the magician girl pointed an accusatory finger at Elizabeth, blaming her for leading them into this predicament. However, as always, Elizabeth looked down upon her, didn't bother to answer her properly. The fact that Elizabeth, the strongest among them, stood idle without taking action, fueled Gilea's anger. Witnessing his wife's fury, the centaur boy approached, attempting to soothe her and impress Queen Elizabeth with his words, saying, "Calm down, escorting Miss Elizabeth is an honor." Regrettably, this only further incensed his magician wife, as she saw her husband now prioritizing Elizabeth over her. A short while later, Glee and the other woman, exhausted from their ordeal, requested a break to rest in the vicinity before continuing their journey. However, Queen Elizabeth vehemently disagreed, refusing to waste any more time by their side. These words stung the centaur's wives, leaving them infuriated. The centaur himself made another attempt to persuade Elizabeth, urging her to stay with them briefly and partake in the restorative elf potions to regain her strength. Queen Elizabeth hesitated for a moment and sought Leping's opinion. Curiosity piqued, he eagerly expressed his desire to taste the elf potion. Employing a cunning trick, he widened his eyes and made them sparkle, successfully convincing her. Elizabeth couldn't help but agree to her servant's request. As time passed, they lit a small fire and gathered around it. Gilia and the other woman, whose name eluded me, felt their strength returning with the elf potion in their grasp. The elf woman, Glee, summoned another potion and sarcastically asked if the mighty Miss Elizabeth truly desired to drink it. This incited her husband's anger, prompting him to scold Glee for her rudeness. She offered an apology to Centaur Dude, but disrespectfully flung the potion towards Elizabeth. Elizabeth caught it near her face, yet she didn't utter any words of gratitude as expected of a queen. Leping's experience differed greatly. He felt elated and couldn't wait to consume the potion. However, as soon as he opened the bottle and took a sip, he grimaced and spewed the liquid out of his mouth in disgust. Witnessing this, the orphan girl couldn't bring herself to drink the potion, as she hadn't even utilized her magical energy to begin with. Unfortunately, their actions offended Glee, who felt they were wasting her hard work. But the incident didn't end there. Elizabeth emptied the potion bottle onto the fire, further fueling Glee's offense. Queen Elizabeth fearlessly locked eyes with the elf woman, curious to see what she would do next. However, the audacious MC intervened, revealing that he had something else to eat. With a flourish, he produced a bunch of bananas from his backpack, distributing them to everyone. The centaur and the others gratefully accepted, while poor Sister Annie found herself left with only an apple after the bananas were divided. She started crying, not from sadness of not receiving a banana, but from the sheer happiness of receiving a gift from someone. This act surprised Leping a little, who couldn't understand why she would cry over a small present. However, she refused to eat the apple and instead asked Leping to let her bring it back for her orphaned siblings. Leping had no complaints. He even promised to give her more fruits once they returned home. Those two party poopers, the elf woman Glee and Gilia, didn't like to eat the bananas. Gilia threw the banana away and Glee squished the banana until it spoiled. Typical. Now the others started peeling off the bananas to satisfy their hungry stomachs. But as soon as they took their first bite, surprise and shock washed over them. It felt like they were transported to another realm. Suddenly they were dressed like those Uganda people with a funky fly buzzing around screaming, "Banana, banana!" They were all wondering what the hell was going on and where the heck they were. And here's where the fun starts. Out of nowhere, 3 elegant grasshoppers appeared and started belting out a song. It was a bit weird, but it went like this: cha-cha-cha-ah-ah-ah. As if that wasn't enough, they even invited the 3 of them to dance along. Once the grasshoppers began singing, they couldn't help but samba their booties off and echo the song. It was as if their bodies were possessed, moving uncontrollably to the rhythm. The lyrics were something like, "Let's dance samba and kick dissatisfaction to the curb. Let joy and trouble switch places, woo, cha-cha-cha, ah-ah-ah." More than the women, the centaur boy was carried away. As she started to dance, no one could stop him. He even asked his wives to follow him and do whatever he's doing. And well, they actually followed him in every movement. From the demi-human appearance, it looked like she's overjoying it. And my perverted mind thought of there's something else in her hands, not a mere banana. For a while, they all enjoying their banana dreams with the grasshoppers. But for the others who were looking at their actions in reality, everything seemed to be a bit different. The way the centaur guy was spinning around and dancing made even his wives, who didn't eat the bananas, disgusted. Well, they had no idea what he's experiencing right now. No blame for them. Not long after they regained consciousness, and their magical levels began to rise steadily. This left all of them in shock, unable to find a reason to understand why this was happening to them. Meanwhile, our clueless MC was enthusiastically clapping and cheering for their bonfire performance. He felt amazed to see a centaur gentleman dancing with his wives around the fire for the first time. However, Elizabeth's misunderstanding seemed never-ending. She thought that perhaps Leing had purposefully fed them those special bananas to help them level up and increase their chances of survival in this dungeon. On the other side, Galia and Glee couldn't believe how much others' magical levels were skyrocketing, leaving them behind. Sister Annie informed them that it was all thanks to Brother Leing's bananas. But this explanation was not acceptable to the magician girl. It only fueled her rage once again. The other woman was still in shock, trying to convince Galia that the bananas had enabled them to break through and advance. Similarly, the demi-human girl was shocked, considering the possibility that the bananas were enchanted by a magician of the demon sovereign level. The centaur boy also had similar thoughts, but no answers to offer them at that moment. Just then, he tried to find out where Leing had obtained those bananas, and of course, this sudden question surprised the MC. Leing's face mirrored his surprise, as if he was saying, "Are you talking to me? Really?" This unexpected reaction from Leing also caught the centaur guy off guard, making him doubt if he had asked the right person. But Leing didn't let it continue, and told him that it was just an ordinary banana. However, the centaur guy refused to believe him. Actually, Leing himself knew his fruits were all natural hybrids. Somehow, he had managed to cultivate a tree that produced multiple fruits, but it was purely accidental. Glee and Galia, convinced that the bananas had caused their husband and the other wives to level up, decided to eat their received bananas and raise their magical levels as well. However, as soon as they attempted to take a bite, the bananas started to rot before their very eyes. The taste was so repulsive that they couldn't even swallow a small piece. The glasses girl witnessed the scene and realized how the healthy bananas turned rotten in just a second, right before the girls tried to eat them. Queen Elizabeth, observing the situation, peeled off her banana and praised the orphan girl for her sharp eyes. In other side, the centaur boy also witnessed the scene and asked the girl if she knew what's the reason behind this. She informed him that it was synchronicity, something she had read in a nun's book, explaining that special treasures usually had to be used under specific conditions to experience their effects. This revelation further enraged the magician wife, who questioned why the orphan girl herself hadn't eaten her given apple. The girl apologized and simply said, "I'm sorry, I just remembered it." However, seeing Elizabeth eating the healthy banana was something she couldn't explain. Elizabeth noticed the heavy and curious look behind the girl's glasses and warned her not to do that again, threatening dire consequences. The poor girl was scared out of her wits, and she apologized immediately and promised to not to do that again. After passing a few minutes, the elven woman still couldn't believe that a simple banana could have such a potent effect, leveling up and enchanting them. She wondered if it was her potions that had caused this transformation. Upon hearing her words, the centaur also expressed doubt and asked Leing if he had any other fruits left in his bag to share with them to make him sure. Our compassionate MC didn't hesitate and willingly wanted to share some of the fruits he had been hiding in his bag with them. Elizabeth, on the other hand, devoured her banana and carelessly discarded the peel. She then proceeded to snatch Leing's bag, claiming that all the contents belonged to her and that she intended to consume them later. Shortly after, she stood up and beckoned Leing to follow her, declaring that they had rested enough. Feeling ashamed of Elizabeth's behavior, Leing apologized. The centaur pretended not to be offended and urged Leing to catch up with Elizabeth, assuring him that they would find them later. Without wasting time, they bid farewell to each other and began their journey forward. The orphan girl, who had grown attached to them, joined their group also, and they continued their trek. Just before they vanished from sight, the demi-elf girl hesitantly questioned whether stealing the bag is the right choice, but she dared not speak too loudly about it. The thought of discovering something even more valuable in Leing's bag troubled the other woman, who persuaded her husband to allow them to forcefully get the bag and search inside its contents. The centaur boy, however, remained steadfast, cautioning them against acting hastily. He knew that an ordinary human couldn't simply carry something extraordinary like that without consequences. He was on the verge of revealing his true identity, as he had intended to make Elizabeth his fifth wife and use her to ascend the ranks of the continent. That Father Biscuit, a half-human bastard who harbored his own nefarious scheme, had some dirty tricks in his mind to use on Elizabeth and MC, eagerly anticipating the moment when he could lay his hands on her magnificent chest. To the surprise of all, his wives seemed to find this evil side of their husband alluring, expressing their desire through inappropriate gestures, even going as far as touching the half-horseman's posterior. It was a request that may not be suitable for your taste, but it was their peculiar way of showing affection. As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, a myriad of wild creatures lurked in the shadows, eagerly awaiting their next prey. Among them was the fearsome shadow wolf leader, ready to strike. But suddenly, something spooked him, causing him to scurry back into the darkness. At that very moment, 3 brave humans, known as the Leing party, happened to pass by. Our cowardly MC, trembling with fear, turned to Elizabeth and desperately asked if there was a way out of this darkness. Queen Elizabeth, as calm as ever, reassured Leing for the umpteenth time that the labyrinth was merely an illusion, and that they would soon reach their ultimate destination. Little did they know, lurking within the very walls of the cave, danger awaited. Whatever these mysterious creatures were, they posed no threat to Elizabeth, but Leing and their companion Annie were in grave peril. Suddenly, the orphan girl's keen ears picked up the sound of something swiftly approaching. She alerted Leing, and just as they turned to look, a blur of lightning-like speed exploded before them, creating a tumultuous cloud of dust. Our poor MC fell to the ground, coughing and gasping for air. As the dust settled, it was revealed that the culprit behind the chaos was none other than a centaur boy. Apologizing for the delay, he stood before them, his wives in tow, but something seemed amiss, as the expressions on their faces did not bode well. The centaur boy, however, took on a gentle demeanor, extending his apologies once more, notably directed toward Elizabeth. He proposed to offer her a special ride on his back, hoping to make amends. But Elizabeth, delivering a crushing blow, uttered the words, "Get lost! You're not worthy of being my mount." The wives of the centaur boy were absolutely furious at Queen Elizabeth's cutting words. In a fit of rage, Glee, the elf woman, leaped from the carriage, delivering a scathing retort. But before she could even finish her sentence, her head was swiftly severed from her body. The gruesome scene left everyone stunned, wondering who or what was responsible for this macabre act. Unbeknownst to them, the giant bug-like creatures that had emerged from the caves were lurking above, poised to attack. It appeared that one of these creatures had ended Glee's life, having her head still clutched between its jaws. Another bug, hungry for its next meal, lunged at them but mistakenly targeted Elizabeth. However, with a mere glance, Elizabeth used her powerful gaze to make the abomination explode in midair. Poor Sister Annie could only cover her head in terror, realizing the futility of her feeble attempt to shield herself from these monsters. And as always, our pathetic MC scurried toward Elizabeth, clinging to her for dear life and pleading for her assistance. It truly bewilders me why Elizabeth hasn't used some martial arts moves to give that MC a good kick in the face. She can't help but be surprised by his consistent cowardice in such dire situations. Meanwhile, the bugs continued to hop around with lightning speed, causing chaos all around. On the other side, the warrior woman wasted no time in grabbing her shield to defend herself. The magician woman, Gelia, conjured a magical shield to protect her family, leaving Leing, Elizabeth, and sister Annie vulnerable and exposed. Taken aback, Leing asked, "What about us?" The centaur boy smirked and responded, "You'll find a way out of this. Don't worry." Little did Leing know, the centaur boy had ulterior motives, seeking to test the strength of Queen Elizabeth. The warrior woman harbored different thoughts, simply wanting to rid themselves of these monstrous foes as quickly as possible. However, fate, or rather the monsters, had a different plan in store for them. Gilia, feeling confident in her powerful shield magic, but suddenly her head was abruptly severed in the blink of an eye. The warrior woman couldn't help but wonder how these creatures managed to bypass the supposedly impenetrable shield. Now, left to their own devices, the three remaining individuals found themselves in a dire situation, forced to summon every ounce of energy to defend themselves. Then and there, the badass centaur boy, the absolute unit among them, raised his sword and swiftly sliced one of those bug-like creatures in half. His warrior wife got a wild twinkle in her eyes as she watched her husband go ham on those monsters. In a frenzy, she charged at one of them, head first, and whacked it with her fiery shield like a boss babe. That cat woman, bless her agile soul, was doing her best to dodge and counterattack those critters, but the overwhelming number of them left her feeling like a deflated balloon. Just when she needed a breather, another beastie tried to play barber and go for her head. But thank every lucky star in the universe, the centaur guy swooped in with a fancy-schmancy horsey backstep and saved her beautiful booty by smashing that thing into the wall like a WWE superstar. While they were busy unleashing their awesomeness on those monsters, Elizabeth stood there, the queen of sass, watching them with a raised eyebrow. She couldn't help but ask Leing if he had finally cracked the code and seen the true color of those guys for what they really were. The MC, opening up his third eye, finally caught on to what she meant. He started contemplating life choices, thinking maybe it would have been better to stick to the peaceful village life, farming and cooking up a storm without a care in the world. Without skipping a beat, Elizabeth, sensing the mood, turned to the boy with the "come with me if you want to live" face and asked him to follow her if he wanted to escape this madness. Leing, clueless as ever, wasn't sure if Elizabeth really had the inside scoop on the way out of this cave-like dungeon. With a firm grip on his hand, the girl motioned for him to take a few steps ahead and follow her lead. As they started marching forward, Sister Annie, bless her brave little heart, sensed something swiftly approaching from behind. It turned out to be one of those creatures ready to wreak havoc, until bam! Out of nowhere, a giant rabbit puppy came swinging with a punch to the face, sending that bug monster flying into the cave's wall, leaving the orphan girl stunned. Then, just when you thought things couldn't get any weirder, that giant rabbit puppy quickly transformed into a small, harmless rabbit doll. The orphan girl was in complete shock because she wasn't the one who summoned that rabbit puppet. But with no time to waste, MC, being the Good Samaritan, invited her to join their merry crew. A few meters further, Elizabeth reached a magical barrier, and it was as if she had a secret squirrel knowledge about it. With a mischievous whisper, she invoked some Harry Potter shit, and poof! The barrier vanished, making way for a giant and mysterious door to appear behind it. MC and Annie, with eyes wider than anime characters, had their minds blown by this sight. They thought, holy moly, could this be the elusive exit door to freedom? Elizabeth, being the badass she is, swung that colossal door open without even laying a finger on it, and she sashayed out of the cave. She looked back, beckoning those two lovable idiots to hurry the heck up before the door slammed shut. Of course, the evil centaur guy noticed what was going down on that side, and Leing couldn't help but steal a glance back, his worry lingering. But you know what? Let's not forget how those two betrayed him earlier. Regardless, he asked Sister Annie to leave this place with him, and without a moment's hesitation, they followed Elizabeth like the adventure-seeking rock stars they were meant to be. Meanwhile, the centaur evil guy flexed his muscles, sliced two monsters in half with a badass flick of his sword, and then commanded his two remaining wives to hop on his back like they were in a bizarre centaur roller coaster ride. At first, those wives looked at him like he had lost his marbles. But hey, who are we to question a half-horse boy on a mission? They hopped on board, ready for whatever insane ride awaited them. Our centaur protag had a little scheme brewing in that wild mind of his. He burned with fury, seeing Leing and Elizabeth gallivanting off like they didn't care. Sure, he conveniently forgot that he had abandoned them first. The door was inches away from closing, but Horse Guy unleashed his pro skills. In a flash, he zipped through the door, heart pounding, just barely squeezing in there in the nick of time. Little did he know, it wasn't the exit door he had bargained for. No, it was a hidden treasure room, a veritable gold mine. The room practically dripped with millions of shimmering gold coins and treasures, like a holy grail for any adventure junkie with a penchant for bling. Our heroes were about to go all Scrooge McDuck on that moolah, and their eyes widened like saucers, reflecting the sheer magnitude of their unexpected luck. It seemed as though the door had transported them not just out of the cave, but into a whole new realm. It was nothing short of astonishing, definitely not your average cave, that's for sure. The sight of unimaginable wealth left the centaur wives utterly gobsmacked, but for our friend Leing, well, he couldn't contain his excitement. Jumping around like a kid in a candy store, he was absolutely ecstatic about suddenly being filthy rich. The poor orphan girl also couldn't help but feel glad, her eyes sparkling with hope as she questioned if they could actually get their hands on some of those shiny gold coins. Meanwhile, that cheeky centaur boy rudely pushed our MC aside and sauntered through. Not to be outdone, his warrior wife gave the little girl a terrifying side-eye and pushed her away with a fierce scowl. Just when things couldn't get any stranger, the half-horse evil guy suddenly stopped dead in his tracks, bursting into laughter as if he were possessed. Turns out, he had found what he came all this way for, a strange golden cup filled with the Demon King's nectar. Leing, witnessing their downright disrespectful and offensive actions, couldn't hold back any longer. He had to remind them that if they were being abandoned, it was only fair since they had pulled the same stunt earlier. It was time for them to act more reasonably and have a smidgen of decency. As if a carefully choreographed dance, the three of them swiveled their heads simultaneously, their expressions a mixture of surprise, annoyance, and perhaps just a dash of anger. Just then, the centaur boy said, "Even I didn't expect you to become so useful, as I just wanted you guys for refilling the numbers and for return of their helps." The half-horse guy promised to give them a painless death. And just when you thought things were about to calm down, fate had other plans. It only took the sound of a single golden coin hitting the ground to awaken the slumbering guardian of this treasure land. The ground trembled, panic ensued, and behold, a colossal dragon emerged from beneath the mountain of coins. It roared furiously, clearly pissed off at the audacity of these intruders who had rudely interrupted its beauty sleep. Leing stood frozen, utterly shocked by this otherworldly spectacle. With trembling hands, he desperately tried to get Queen Elizabeth to acknowledge the imminent threat before them like she was blind or something. Meanwhile, poor Sister Annie trembled with fear, seeking guidance from her master. Actually, I am not sure who on earth did she mean by master. Elizabeth, too, observed the terrified girl with a curious frown, wondering who she was referring to. But alas, there was no time for pondering as the colossal dragon let out another ear-shattering roar, seemingly declaring its readiness for a brawl. The warrior women quickly plotted their course of action, with the husband and the catwoman buying her some time to deliver one mighty blow to the dragon. However, the centaur cut her off with a flick of his hoof and commanded his wives to do the same for him. But before they could continue their debate, the dragon lunged forward, forcing the agile wives to evade its attack with swift ninja-like moves. The warrior women instructed Lolo, the catwoman, to initiate the attack and distract the giant creature for their master. Without any hesitation or argument, Lolo agreed to carry out the task. The half-human girl, utilizing a secret special skill called the clone technique, conjured clones of herself from pieces of paper. Each clone mirrored her exact form and swiftly charged towards the dragon. Sensing that the dragon posed the greatest threat, the centaur boy decided it was the right time to reveal his true power. He gathered all his strength, preparing to unleash his ultimate move. Meanwhile, the assassin girl's clone arrived at the dragon and began striking at every vulnerable point. However, their attacks proved ineffective against the dragon's resilient skin, leaving the girl shocked by the creature's durability. In response, the other woman urged the Catwoman to entrust the rest of the battle to her. Utilizing her own unique skill, she transformed her shield into a colossal blaster. Waste no time, she unleashed a barrage of devastating firepower, akin to the output of a war missile. The scorching flames of the transformed shield viciously collided with the majestic golden dragon, leaving Gasha, the warrior woman, absolutely exhilarated. She believed that her newfound skill upgrade had surely dealt a killing blow to the dragon boss. But alas, to her astonishment, the dragon emerged from the inferno unscathed, its resilience catching her completely off guard. With an intense glare, the dragon's colossal paw swiftly descended upon Gasha, mercilessly pulverizing her into a pitiful mess, reducing her to nothing more than a sausage-like existence. Witnessing her dear housemate's pitiable descent after being crushed by the dragon, Lolo, the Catwoman, was consumed by a raging desire for vengeance. With a wave of her hand, she unleashed a plethora of peculiar paper sheets into the air, while channeling her ultimate technique, the fearsome 1,000-person clone technique. The ground surrounding her transformed into a sea of more than 1,000 furious and irresistibly adorable catwomen, all eager to avenge Gasha's fall. Though Lolo knew full well that her clones alone couldn't inflict much harm upon the dragon, it was her best strategy to disrupt the dragon's focus and grant the centaur guy precious time. With an air of unwavering confidence, the dragon unfurled its magnificent wings and began spinning, conjuring a ravaging hurricane made of glittering golden coins. The once formidable clones found themselves powerless against the cyclone of coins, as one by one they were obliterated, vanishing into thin air within seconds. The lethal wrath of the golden coins not only decimated the clones, but also posed a dire threat to Leing and Elizabeth. Yet despite the imminent danger, our MC stood defiantly still, not lifting a single finger nor attempting to flee. Elizabeth, on the other hand, was shielded by her innate protective barrier. But observing Leing's unwavering resolve in the face of such potential peril didn't come as a surprise to her. After all, a legendary hero would never cower in fear. As the MC sported an eerily calm expression, it was clear that he had fallen under the hypnotic spell of the mesmerizing golden cyclone, believing himself to be already dead, that no need for further action. Meanwhile, on the brink of death itself, Sister Annie could no longer bear the impending doom and unleashed her most powerful summon. A colossal teddy panda bear, 10 times the size of a mere human, materialized right before their eyes. This fluffy guardian planted itself firmly between our heroes and deflected every incoming onslaught of golden coins. Meanwhile, 2 treacherous golden coins hurtled menacingly towards the centaur guy. Luckily, Lolo's ever-sharp instincts allowed her to detect the impending danger, and without a moment's hesitation, she ordered her 2 remaining clones to shield her beloved husband. Their swift and selfless actions undoubtedly saved his life. Ah, the feeling of being a hero and knowing she'd saved her master truly amazed her. However, the girl allowed her guard down, and the dragon's razor-sharp gaze missed nothing, and with a single thunderous blow from a flying golden coin, the unfortunate half-cat girl met her untimely demise, her head pierced through as if struck by a sniper's bullet. And yet, in the face of profound loss, the centaur boy remained motionless, seemingly unaffected by the tragedy. It appeared that losing his last wife did not shake his resolve. Perhaps he was still harnessing some unknown form of power, whether it be strength or magical energy, in preparation for what lay ahead. After a few agonizing seconds of mourning, his charging came to a frenzied climax. Bursting with confidence in his ultimate skill, he swiftly charged toward the dragon with the intention to strike it down, believing that not even a demon spirit could resist his attack. However, as the dust began to settle, it became evident that the dragon remained unscathed, while the boy's sword took the brunt of the impact. His trusty weapon first cracked, then shattered into countless pieces, leaving the ugly guy utterly baffled as to what the hell just happened. The dragon fixed its piercing gaze upon him. With a deafening strike of its monumental tail, the half-human guy was propelled through the air, hurtling and crashing mercilessly into a treacherous hill of gold coins. The sheer force of his impact created a billowing trail of dust, marking his path in a tumultuous cloud. Now, as the dust settled, only a formidable 4-star demon sect dragon remained, glaring menacingly at our MC and their companions. Leping stood before the dragon, oozing an air of calmness that bordered on madness. It was as if he no longer cared about the outcome, having witnessed the centaur boy almost meet his demise with a single swipe of the dragon's tail. Sensing the perfect moment, Leping signaled to Queen Elizabeth that it was time to reveal his trump card. Intrigued yet uncertain, Elizabeth couldn't help but wonder what he had up his sleeve. With a sudden change in demeanor, Leping shamelessly commanded Elizabeth to take action. Caught off guard, Elizabeth thought to herself, "Does he already know? Well, I'm not sure what she is talking about." Then MC said, "If you don't do it, I'm afraid we will die here." Elizabeth, a little bit offended to hear how Leping ordered her like this in front of an outsider, thinking how he's using the orphan girl for threatening her. It seems like Elizabeth feels something strange about the Sister Annie. Meanwhile, Sister Annie grew even more terrified, whispering softly, "The real terror hasn't arrived yet. We may never escape this place." Her words didn't go unnoticed by Elizabeth, who glared at her before suddenly approaching and placing a hand on Annie's head. With a commanding tone, Elizabeth said, "The bloodline of Jimji, let me witness the true power of your magic." And just like that, an aura began to emanate around the girl. Curiously, the giant dragon seemed to allow them to carry on, neglecting to attack. It was as if it granted them the freedom to explore their own path. Strange, isn't it? Suddenly, Annie's eyes widened as her forgotten memories from childhood flooded back. It appeared that she had once led a happy life in the church, taking on the role of a caring older sister and honing her impressive summoning puppet skill. However, soon her peaceful days came to an abrupt end when a group of ruthless bandits attacked the nuns and began kidnapping the helpless orphans. As the eldest and strongest among them, Annie attempted to escape, but was captured. In a bewildering moment, it seemed as if something had possessed her, her eyes changing shape. The aura surrounding Sister Annie grew more powerful, pushing the guy back as she started to transform, her eyes turning a piercing black. Hovering in mid-air was a massive teddy bear, serving as an eerie backdrop to her lost control. In a shocking display of unleashed power, she mercilessly slaughtered not only the bandits, but even her own orphan siblings. When she finally regained consciousness, the horrifying reality set in that everyone lay dead around her. The pouring rain only added to the sense of despair, leaving her with nothing but screams and tears of anguish. To Elizabeth's surprise, she too witnessed these twisted memories, realizing that her magic had been forcibly manipulated to suppress and alter her own recollections. Drawing on her power, she managed to break through the magical barrier that had veiled her true potential. Overwhelmed by the revelations, Annie crumpled to the ground, her tear-filled eyes overflowing with regret, burdened with self-blame for the tragic fate of her siblings. In a devastating blow, Elizabeth shattered Sister Annie's former personality by proclaiming her a disgrace to the Jimji clan. However, she extended an offer to the orphan girl to fight alongside her. Those words sparked a newfound spirit within the pitiful girl, igniting a fierce determination to protect Brother Leping. Like an entirely different person, she floated fearlessly in the air, her aura transforming once again. On the other hand, Leping was taken aback by Sister Annie's sudden empowerment. Only moments ago, she had seemed harmless and weak. Ah, the unpredictability of the human spirit. Unfazed by the shocking change in Annie, he watched in awe as she assumed the position of a grand summoner attempting to employ her puppet summoning skill once more. However, this time, it wasn't just a small rabbit that appeared. Instead, except that Teddy Panny, 3 colossal teddy snake, eagle, and rabbit materialized, each larger than the next. The dragon finally decided it was the perfect moment to launch an attack on our brave heroes. At first glance, it seemed as if the dragon's paw had pierced a hole in the panda bear's body. But fear not, for the teddy valiantly blocked the blow, refusing to let harm befall our dedicated legendary heroes. The panda exerted all its strength to immobilize the dragon, firmly latching onto one of its arms. In that moment, the teddy rabbit seized the opportunity, leaping into the air and delivering a barrage of powerful punches to the dragon's body. Surprisingly, these punches proved to be incredibly potent, enough to make the dragon roar in pain and even crack its formidable shell. Leping's eyes widened, filled with questions as he turned to Elizabeth, seeking an explanation for what she had done to Annie. To his surprise, she simply replied, "Nothing. I merely helped her accept reality." However, the dragon wasn't one to back down. It caught the rabbit puppet off guard, causing it to crash to the ground, though luckily sustaining no damage. It remained trapped under the dragon's paw, immobilized and unable to make a move. Two of the dragon's hands were now occupied. Seizing the opportunity, the snake puppet swiftly approached the dragon, coiling around its massive body with all its strength. The dragon found itself in a hopeless situation. Yet it still had one escape plan. It unfurled its wings and conjured a golden cyclone around itself, trying to forcefully push the puppet's bay. "By the way, isn't that thing more like an owl rather than eagle?" The bird puppet also made its move, sending powerful waves by its wings to disrupt the dragon's cyclone, slowing it down considerably. Meanwhile, as Annie and her puppets battled the relentless dragon, MC couldn't help but be in awe, continuously asking Elizabeth about the significance of the Jimji bloodline. Yet, before receiving an answer, he suddenly felt a tug on his backpack, as it was obvious. That was the lighting speed of that bloody bastard centaur. That guy was hardly injured and wretched, but still alive and kicking. Even Elizabeth was taken aback by his survival after what happened to him. On the other hand, Leping was more concerned about his beloved backpack, demanding that it be returned. But, oh, that half-horse guy paid no attention to Leping's pleas. Instead, he pulled out a pineapple, deeming it his ultimate trump card. Then, with the grace of a vagabond, he started munching on the pineapple, followed by a mango or something like that, and finally some grapes. I'm not quite sure if he left anything for Leping himself. Elizabeth remained still, glaring as she had done all day, and Leping couldn't comprehend why on earth this guy was eating fruit in the midst of such a dire situation. He truly is the worst and most clueless MC as always. Before long, after indulging in these fruits, the centaur boy went through a dramatic transformation. His appearance began to change as power overflowed from his very being. His eyes widened, his muscles grew 5 times larger, and his clothes shredded as if they were no match for his expanding physique. In less than a minute, he transformed into an even uglier but exponentially stronger, believing no one has chance against him right now. Looking at his rather unconventional hands, the centaur felt relieved to possess such power. He realized that from that moment onward, he would no longer need to fear the individuals in the Sword Saint Guild. Curiously, the dragon grew annoyed merely by observing the centaur's appearance. It decided to finish him off using its golden breath technique. However, just as the attack was about to strike, the centaur vanished into thin air, seemingly teleporting right in front of the dragon's face. Shouting, "Stop bothering me, you mother biscuit!" He then utilized his front legs to land a thunderous kick on the dragon's face. This kick was so powerful that it sent the dragon reeling backward, causing it to crash to the ground, as if it had already been defeated. After a few seconds, the centaur slowly descended to the ground and approached the holy grail containing the Demon King's nectar. Without wasting any time, he picked it up, whispering to himself about how much stronger he could become by combining this nectar with Leping's fruits. And with that, he began to consume the entire nectar, his eyes widening once he finished drinking, and his body started to trembling. Not only did his size increase again, but he also sprouted enormous wings and horns. I'm uncertain as to how to accurately label him now. Is he a half-human, half-horse, half-demon, half-devil? Well. This disconcertingly unattractive and intimidating individual was pleased by his newfound strength and appearance. With a sinister look reminiscent of the devil himself, he believed that he had become unstoppable. Meanwhile, the MC, observing the bizarre and unsettling transformations of this individual, felt a distinct sense of danger. In his usual fashion, he turned to Elizabeth and pleaded for her assistance, urging her to do something about the situation. With the defeat of the dragon, Sister Annie declared that there was no need to worry, as she would handle the creature herself. However, just as she was about to summon her puppets, she suddenly felt a searing pain in her body. It was that unfortunate individual who appeared out of nowhere, stabbing his claw into her delicate chest. He believed that Annie was the final threat standing in the way of his sinister ambitions. Leping, shocked and devastated, felt a wave of sorrow, his tears welling up. In a heartless act, the wretched centaur dropped the lifeless body of the poor orphan to the ground and began walking ominously towards Elizabeth and Leping. The MC paid little heed to the danger of the creature and focused on rushing to Sister Annie's aid. As he reached her side, he gently held her limp head in his arms, crying as if he had lost his own sister. Meanwhile, the wicked and devilish centaur grew dangerously close to Elizabeth, as if he intended to commit an unholy act. However, the ever-so-calm and fearless demon queen stood resolute in the face of that abomination. The ugly centaur attempted to approach Elizabeth's face as if he were about to kiss her magnificent lips, but in reality, he was doing everything in his power to impress Queen Elizabeth and persuade her to accept him as her husband. Not only that, but he also yearned to be brought back to her kingdom and inherit everything. He threatened her with consequences worse than death, causing her to endure despair with every passing minute. Unlike Elizabeth, Leping couldn't contain his anger upon hearing those words. With a commanding voice, he demanded that Elizabeth put an end to that wretched bastard. Unaware of the true identities of Leping and Elizabeth, the ugly centaur again mistook Leping for one of Elizabeth's servants and became enraged at the meddling servant who dared to interfere with his plans. In no time at all, he appeared right above Leping and attempted to silence him with a powerful kick to the face. And actually, he did it without mercy, but somehow it was the demon centaur who found himself thrown backward, as if on the receiving end of a powerful kick. On the other hand, when the dust settled around the MC's figure, he stood completely unharmed, finally realizing that it was time to shed his facade and reveal his true self. Meanwhile, the unholy and unsightly individual found himself recoiling backward as his powerful attack was unexpectedly repelled. Confusion filled his mind as he pondered what force could have caused this. Soon enough, he realized it must have been the work of Queen Elizabeth, who remained steadfast in her position without lifting a finger. Only Elizabeth herself truly knew what had transpired earlier. It seemed that even the formidable magic of Queen Elizabeth could not harm Leping due to the protective clothing he had crafted with his own hands. Elizabeth, being aware of this, did not intervene in the attack, nor did she exhibit any shock at the turn of events. Leping, too, acted as if he was aware of the situation all along, feigning ignorance and maintaining his usual clueless demeanor, despite people continuously referring to him as a hero. However, a moment later it dawned on him that he was actually not pretending at all, but was genuinely clueless and foolish, just as he had always been, even in the moments prior. He finally realized that it was, in fact, Elizabeth who had saved him. Why? Because he believes that as long as he serves Elizabeth and prepare meals for her, she would protect him from harm. With a comical expression on his face, Leping explained that as long as he remained useful to Elizabeth, she would ensure his survival, regardless of the level of danger. I'm unsure whether the MC was explaining the situation to us or to the unattractive individual, but it was apparent that the individual grew irritated and bewildered by the unfolding events. The unsightly individual began laughing uproariously, boasting that he had only utilized half of his power thus far. He continued to glare at Queen Elizabeth, firmly convinced that everything that had occurred was her doing. With that belief in mind, he leaped forward, intent on imparting a lesson to Elizabeth and reminding her of her grave mistake. However, not surprisingly, just as he was mere inches away from her, a massive and unexpected obstruction materialized out of thin air, forcefully not only blocking his path, but delivering a devastating blow that shattered the wretched creature's bones into pieces before crashing him to the ground. For goodness sake, Elizabeth remained motionless, showing no intention of taking any action whatsoever. With only one eye visible, she calmly said, "Did you finally woken up?" Meanwhile, the half-horse, half-demon guy lay in his fallen state, unable to even speak properly, bewildered by what had just occurred. As if out of a mystical haze, a golden figure slowly emerged from the purple fog. It was a dragon, but a colossal one, 1,000 times larger than the previous creature. In that moment, the half-dead wretch realized that this massive golden dragon was the true form of the small dragon he had foolishly believed he had vanquished with a single blow. In a matter of seconds, the lifeless body of the smaller dragon melted away, returning to its original form as if it had never existed. Queen Elizabeth's emotionless face betrayed her knowledge of this colossal golden dragon, casually remarking, "Using your tail as a mere diversion? A little trick I often employed to toy with you before." The size of the dragon was so immense that half of its body was concealed within the vast void of this realm. And as legends would have it, this was no ordinary dragon but the Queen of Dragons herself. Now, turning our attention back to the pitiful sight of the fallen adversary, he clung to his misplaced faith in the power of the Demon King and Leping's magical fruits, still believed that no one would stand a chance against him. Yet the dragon, with a swift and powerful strike, crushed him once again, this time with the aid of a single claw. As expected, nothing remained of the despicable creature, save for a mere pool of blood, as if he had dissolved into nothingness. From the depths of my heart, I must express gratitude to the dragon for killing that ugly guy. I really appreciate it, bruh. Leping, though unfazed by the demise of his foe, was left in awe at the sight of such a colossal being. With a sense of wonder, he questioned in disbelief, "Is this truly real, Elizabeth?" Displaying confidence in Leping's perception, Elizabeth declared, "I knew you had figured it out long ago. This realm isn't real, but an illusion." The golden coins that littered the landscape began to fade away, followed by the disappearance of the entire land, leaving our characters floating in the vast expanse of what could only be described as space. Then, in a language unfamiliar to all except Elizabeth, possibly the language of demons or dragons, the colossal golden dragon uttered words that only Elizabeth could comprehend. A swift response from Elizabeth caused the giant creature to wail like a child of 2 years, and in a truly unexpected twist, the dragon seemed to implode, and from its remains emerged a small girl who lacked the cuteness one might expect. This girl, known as Amelia, actually is Elizabeth's pet. She gleefully approached Elizabeth, wrapping her arms around her waist like a true child, questioning why her master had left her alone for 500 long years without a single word. Let's hear the story of how Amelia and Elizabeth found each other from the Amelia's perspective. I was burned between earth and heaven, and Master Elizabeth was the one who found me in the lost secret realm and hatched me with help of her magical power. In that very first day, we made contract, and not only Queen Elizabeth gave me a name, Amelia, but also personally guided me, trained me, and played with me. So I made a secret oath that I would definitely protect and serve my master. After I grew up, I became my master's mount, carrying her around to fight against vile creatures. Later, in order to put an end to the constant wars, Master decided to rule the world. I was happy to see my master achieve world domination one step at a time. But since then, my master Elizabeth's smile had become fainter and fainter, and she started to grow even stronger and stronger by passing each day, and I was too weak to help her. Unexpectedly, when I went to patrol the world in her stead, she went to pull out the holy sword to find the legendary hero, and there has been no news since then. In the end, the ministers scattered everything and divided the regions. I was not interested in any of that, so I only took half a glass of wine and returned to the place where Master first found me. I believed that Master would come here one day. After that, I waited so long for her return. Waited, and my master didn't come, and everything around me started to change. I slept for hundreds of years waiting for her, unaware of what's happening around me. The Amelia was overwhelmed with emotion, crying non-stop, but from the happiness of seeing her beloved master back. However, Elizabeth's emotionless face didn't show any excitement, feeling unlike that dragon girl. Amelia crying out loud, realizing maybe the Queen Elizabeth had left her alone on purpose to grasp meditation and reach the Demon King level, she desperately asking Elizabeth to don't leave her alone again. Leping couldn't listen to the conversation about the past anymore and asked Elizabeth to quickly do something to save Sister Annie. In that moment, suddenly, the orphan girl opened her eyes and called Leping's name, and not long after completely regained consciousness, standing and questioning the boy about where they are. Leing couldn't help but feel relief inside as he witnessed the girl not only is alive, but it seems like she's somehow uninjured. The orphan girl tried to comfort Leing and assure him about her health. However, as soon as she regained consciousness, she realized her beloved gift, that apple from Brother Leing, was ruined, and that was bothering her. But the boy didn't find it something concerningly, as he placed his hand on her big head and started to petting her. Elizabeth couldn't help but watch them curiously, wondering how Leing could take everything under his control, revealing he laid the groundwork when was dividing the bananas that caused the girl to survive. In other hand, still the dragon girl, Amelia was attached to her, enjoying her precious time with her master. Seeing how Queen Elizabeth is caring about that boy made her furious, questioning why Queen Elizabeth is keep glaring at that ugly boy and doesn't pay any attention to her. With a face of an angry bird, she asked Elizabeth, "Master, who's that ugly idiot boy?" And in return, Elizabeth answered, "He's the legendary hero that I stayed at his house while I was away." Now Amelia became sure that she needed to kill that guy, as she believed he kidnapped her master for 500 years and did something unholy, something like doubly lovely thing to her. Unlike Amelia, Leing, in his peaceful mind, tried to introduce himself with a warm smile. But the dragon girl thought it's the best chance to finish him off with help of the Queen Elizabeth while the boy's guard still is down. She changed back one of her hands to Golden Dragon Claw and dashed toward our MC in order to cut his head as fast as possible. Unfortunately for her, something similar as when the centaur guy attacked him happened. Same as that perished horse, the dragon girl, Amelia, stunned. Couldn't understand how that ugly guy blocked her attack, believing her attack was enough strong to wipe out an entire town. However, our fucking dumb MC thought she wanted to shake his hand for greetings, and even apologized for not being fast enough to catch her hand. The fear started to grow within her as she witnessed some part of the legendary hero's power. And exactly in that time, Leing started to approach to the little girl, saying something about to return the favor. She, as the Queen of Dragons and strongest after Queen Elizabeth, realized that boy is surpassing her in each way, and the fear inside her increased a lot that even caused her to close her eyes and hopelessly ask Leing for forgiveness. Just then, MC grabbed and shaked her hand and made the girl surprised and think, what the actual heck is going on with this dumb? Is he really the legendary hero? But actually, Leing thought that the Amelia is Elizabeth's friend, so he wanted to make her also one of his friends, acting not out of her soft-hearted character. However, Elizabeth made it clear for Boy, Amelia is her mount. It sounds like our stupid boy couldn't remember Amelia is actually a giant golden dragon, so his perspective from how Amelia is carrying the Queen Elizabeth caught me off guard. God bless me. By flicking her finger, Queen Elizabeth initiated a spell enveloped in a glowing pink aura, causing all of them to vanish in the blink of an eye and reappear in Leing's village. Amelia couldn't help but be amazed as her master possessed such a marvelous teleportation spell. Meanwhile, MC breathed a sigh of relief upon realizing they were back at his cozy farm. Leing, understanding that as long as he stuck with Elizabeth, everything would be fine, observed a slight change in the situation. However, the situation was a little different for Sister Annie, struggled to cope with the tremendous stress of being instantly transported from a far distance, ultimately collapsing into Leing's arms. For the first time, it seemed that Elizabeth genuinely cared for someone's safety, as she requested the boy to carry the poor girl inside and allow her to rest. Leing wasted no time and followed Elizabeth's instructions, gently carrying Annie into his tranquil home. Meanwhile, Elizabeth turned her icy gaze towards Amelia. The petite dragon girl comprehended that her queen had tasks in mind for her, and she eagerly awaited to learn what Elizabeth desired of her. With a curious tone, Elizabeth asked, "Have you ever heard of the Dark Guild from the demon realm?" Amelia, with her mind racing, frantically searched for an answer to please her queen. She recollected scattered fragments of information she had encountered before her centuries-long slumber. She revealed that the Dark Guild had been established by Malfoy, the Prince of Mankind, shortly after Queen Elizabeth's disappearance. From Elizabeth's demeanor and actions, it was clear that she already knew of this Malfoy character. Amelia found herself contemplating the Queen's intentions and pondered what she could do about the situation. In response to Amelia's thoughts, Elizabeth expressed her disdain for the Dark Guild, as they had caused much death and destruction under the pretense of resurrection. Amelia seethed with anger upon hearing about these foolish humans who dared to displease and disrespect her master. She immediately demanded permission to punish them all. Elizabeth, in response, tasked Amelia with making them disappear from the world, under the condition that she mustn't divulge any information about the village or the queen herself. Amelia eagerly agreed to the conditions set by Elizabeth, as the queen had promised to grant her freedom once the mission was accomplished. Filled with determination, Amelia set out to complete her mission swiftly, assuring the queen that the Dark Guild would be considered dead before her departure. However, little did Amelia know that her excitement would be met with an unexpected obstacle. Just as she was about to take flight, a missile suddenly launched out of nowhere, crashing into her with force. Amelia sustained some injuries and couldn't help but wonder who had dared to attack her and managed to penetrate her tough skin. It was then that she witnessed a robotic dog, Wang Kai No. 2, positioned on a small cliff. The dog detected Amelia as a threat to the farm and Leing, thus escalating its defense level to 2 and firing another missile. The second missile startled the poor girl to her core, but she managed to block it with her resilient wings. Despite the onslaught, Amelia confidently declared, "Choosing me as your opponent? You've made the wrong choice." However, her confidence waned when she saw more than 8 missiles now hurtling towards her. In a moment of despair, she found herself unable to defend against the barrage and was mercilessly struck by all of the missiles. Wang Kai, not content with just that, advanced to level 3, prepared to finish Amelia off with its intended masterpiece. Just as the dog was about to deliver the final blow, a voice from Elizabeth stunned the foolish canine. Elizabeth's words carried so much power that even the dog trembled, realizing the consequences of harming her companion. Wang Kai reluctantly put Amelia on its whitelist, but it looks already too late, as the poor Amelia was on the brink of death. Inside the house, Leing, completely unaware of what was happening outside, was preparing a special orange juice for Sister Annie. Before long, the fruit juice was ready, and Leing attempted to give it to the poor dizzy girl. Sister Annie, still trembling from her collapse, tried to take a sip of the juice. But as soon as she did, she felt a strange sensation coursing through her body, as if every drop of that juice infused her neurons with powerful, advanced, divine magic. Sister Annie's eyes widened in realization that the juice contained immensely potent magic, beyond anything she had ever encountered. Suddenly, a vivid image of a frightening nun appeared in her mind, echoing, "I am you, and you are me. Stop suppressing your true self." The sight of the terrifying nun frightened Sister Annie to the core, and tears of fear welled up in her eyes. Unbeknownst to MC, who was casually relaxing on the sofa, he remained unaware of what was happening inside the girl's mind, thinking he's not a man of adventure. Just as he was lost in his own thoughts, Elizabeth entered the house. The moment she laid eyes on the petite girl, something sparked within her, triggering a memory of her true identity. She too settled down on the sofa, revealing to Sister Annie that her ancestors, the Jijim clan, had sworn an oath to her, pledging unwavering loyalty to Elizabeth. The queen reminded her that if she awakened her dormant bloodline fully, the power of that ancient oath would also manifest. In that moment, Sister Annie's teary eyes transformed from shock to awe as she beheld the true hidden form of Queen Elizabeth. She felt like a fragile bird held tight within the grasp of a powerful, majestic beast. Fueled by newfound curiosity and courage, Sister Annie gathered the strength to ask the question that had been burning within her. She cautiously inquired if Elizabeth was, in fact, the legendary demon queen from 500 years ago. In response, Elizabeth proclaimed herself as the true ruler of the world, the Queen of Demons, Elizabeth. Sister Annie couldn't believe her ears, for she had learned that the Queen Elizabeth from the legends had been slain by the heroic figure of old. However, in that very moment, she realized the astonishing truth. If Elizabeth was the demon queen, then Leing must be the legendary hero. And of course, Leing confirmed just that. The petite girl found herself lost in contemplation, reflecting on the events of the past. From her perspective, it seemed as though Brother Leing and Sister Elizabeth engaged in the ultimate battle, vying for the title of the strongest. However, after an intense month-long struggle, something unexpected occurred. They both developed deep feelings for one another and, in a surprising twist, abandoned their pursuit of power to embrace love. From that point forward, they chose to live in seclusion for hundreds of years. To the shorty girl's astonishment, Queen Elizabeth confirmed much of her speculation. However, it was Leing who worried that she had offended Elizabeth and would face punishment, prompting him to try and stop Annie. But Elizabeth did not mind at all. In fact, the Queen swiftly changed the topic and began discussing Annie herself, proclaiming, "As a descendant of the demon super warrior bloodline, you have fallen into such a state. You have brought great embarrassment upon the demon clan." Upon hearing these words, Leing found himself taken aback, finally comprehending the truth that Sister Annie was actually from the demon clan. Although Annie had no response, opting to remain silent. On the other hand, Queen Elizabeth proceeded to recount the tale of the Jijim bloodline, a lineage that spanned over 600 years. It all began with a child named Jijim who awakened his dormant bloodline. His eyes would ablaze with red fury whenever he tapped into his magic powers. The passing days saw a tremendous improvement in his combat skills. Alas, as his power surged, so too did his violent nature. His insatiable thirst for killing could only be quenched by constant bloodshed. In a matter of years, he wrought havoc upon the Northern Territories, leaving over 100 of my elite men slain. Fueled by his ruthless ambition, he dared to march straight into my castle, seeking to challenge my authority. Naturally, I swiftly defeated him and sealed away his savage side. Since then, he and his descendants have vowed eternal loyalty to me, generation after generation. Annie trembled, whether out of fear or the unbearable truth becoming clear. She stammered, her voice filled with the remnants of memories spent in the church with her orphan siblings. However, Elizabeth shattered her hopeful illusion, revealing that Annie had already slain all of her siblings in the church during her rampage. Yet because Annie couldn't bear to accept this grim reality, she clung to the delusion that her siblings remained unharmed. At that moment, the poor girl couldn't help but wonder if her beloved siblings truly are dead or alive. Being as clueless as ever, Leing scratched his head and blurted out, "Elizabeth, didn't we run into her siblings at the market earlier?" Elizabeth, with a sly smile, decided to expose the lie and show Leing the truth about Annie's younger brothers and sisters. With a dramatic flick of her finger, she attempted to summon a magical transfer door, hoping to reveal the real deal. But all they saw was a bunch of dolls haphazardly thrown in a corner. However, Annie saw things a little differently. In her perspective, those dolls came to life, showing the image of her lost siblings, greeting her with open arms and begging her to come back to the church as soon as possible. Before Annie could fully process what was happening, Elizabeth, not wanting to prolong the illusion, quickly closed the transfer door. It seemed like Elizabeth only wanted to highlight how Annie was using her magical powers to give life to those dolls. And because of that, her skills as a magician remained painfully low. Elizabeth's words not only sparked a revelation within Sister Annie, but they also left Leing completely flabbergasted. Elizabeth, still lounging on the sofa, did her best to comfort the bewildered girl, explaining that she had awakened her bloodline solely to protect her younger siblings, but killed them unwanted when she was on rampage mode. However, things got out of hand, and she lost control, going berserk. It was a truth that Annie had avoided facing for quite some time, and now was the time to face it. In the middle of the room, the poor orphan girl couldn't bear to accept this heartbreaking reality. Her body trembled even more fiercely than before, and she suddenly stood up, crying out, "My head hurts! My head hurts!" But with the swift touch of Elizabeth's powerful finger, it all came to a halt, and Annie slipped into unconsciousness. Thankfully, Leing swooped in just in the nick of time, cradling Annie's unconscious body in his arms. Elizabeth knew that the girl's collapse was temporary and warned Leing that if she were to awaken and still couldn't control her powers, she could easily cause widespread destruction. Although MC was determined to help her, and find a solution to this peculiar problem. After a few minutes or hours, the scene shifted to the church, where the orphan girl was peacefully sleeping on a bed. Leing sat nearby, keeping watch over her. Suddenly, Sister Annie regained consciousness and opened her eyes. Unable to contain her curiosity, she asked Leing if he was the one who brought her to the church and also apologized for inconveniencing him earlier. Leing revealed that he had used Elizabeth's teleportation magic to bring her there, all while he was busy with Annie's dolls. He then inquired if she was feeling any better. Overwhelmed with emotion, Sister Annie started crying once again, as she still believed that she was responsible for the deaths of her orphan siblings. Leing did his best to comfort her, assuring her that she was not a murderer and that her intentions were only to protect her younger brothers and sister. Despite his efforts, Annie continued to blame herself, devastated by the loss and her lack of control. Leing, determined to offer solace, shifted the conversation to the subject of dolls, assuming the role of a skilled tailor. He pointed out the knots she had made on the dolls, noting that they didn't look quite right. Without asking for permission, he skillfully started to untie the knots and improve the doll's appearance. In no time, he dismantled the dolls piece by piece to make them even better. However, instead of finding joy, Annie couldn't believe what Leing had done to her only keepsake of her siblings. The sight caused her eyes to darken once again as she was about to lose control again. But Leing remained calm and began singing a soothing song. Shakespeare once said, "Don't wander beneath the tree. Don't pander under the rain. Don't cry beneath the rain." As soon as she heard these lyrics, Sister Annie felt herself transported to another location. She found herself floating in the middle of an unknown place, surrounded by water, feeling utterly alone and without hope. Frightened and desperate, she screamed, "Where am I?" In that very moment, a colossal hand emerged from the cloudy sky, reaching out towards the girl. With a voice that resonated like that of a god, it declared, "Look forward, never look back. With courage and your head held high, you shall conquer this tempestuous haze, for it is but a fleeting rainy season." The orphan girl gazed up at the heavens, desperately seeking the divine being responsible for these words. To her amazement, it was none other than Leing himself, wearing an artificial smile, attempting to uplift her spirit and forge a path forward. As his hand drew closer, imitating that of a giant godlike figure, he scooped up Annie, whisking her away from the clutches of that eternal nightmare. Overwhelmed, she could only watch in a daze, unable to question the surreal turn of events. A few moments passed, and Annie finally snapped back to reality, jolted by Leing's boisterous exclamation of triumph. Delighted with his quick work, he presented her with a breathtaking angelic doll, complete with lustrous blonde hair. He christened it Raphael, heightening its celestial aura. A smile tugged at Leing's lips, as he felt a glimmer of hope that this angel doll would aid in her healing process. Without wasting any time, Leing placed the precious doll in the broken girl's arms. The delicate touch of the doll triggered a wave of emotion within Annie, as it felt as though she was embracing her lost siblings once more. Overwhelmed with joy, tears streamed down her face, yet this time, they were tears of gratitude. As Annie looked on, she was astounded to witness the apparitions of her deceased younger brothers and sisters, their ethereal forms bringing her comfort. In that heart-wrenching moment, they bid their final farewells, assuring Annie that they would rest in eternal peace. The girl could no longer contain her emotions, and like a baby, she wailed aloud, a mingling of sorrow and happiness coursing through her. The realization that she would never see her siblings again in the physical realm was bittersweet. In her anguish, Leing, playing the role of the compassionate caretaker, gently stroked her head, reminding her that the storm would pass, leaving behind a clear sky. Deep inside himself, Leing felt a surge of relief, knowing that the tailoring skills acquired from the enigmatic system would prove useful someday. Little did he anticipate that such expertise would come in handy during this very moment. In another side of the continent, Amelia, the Dragon Queen, arrived at the Dark Guild's location. After carefully scanning her surroundings, she landed on the edge of a cliff, declaring, "How dare those pathetic fools defile Queen Elizabeth's territory like this?" She absolutely loathed the sight of that mysterious and repulsive castle in the deserted wasteland. Without wasting any time, Amelia leaped towards the castle and skillfully landed on the ground. As she cautiously approached, she encountered some peculiar creatures blocking her path. They were salivating at the prospect of a long-awaited prey. However, with a single motion, Amelia effortlessly dispatched the majority of them, clearing her way forward. Standing there, calm and composed, she couldn't help but wonder how these lowly scum could dare to violate Queen Elizabeth's sacred land. As for those pitiful creatures who managed to survive, they were utterly shocked and horrified at the sight of this petite girl obliterating their comrades in the blink of an eye. They quickly stepped aside, showing no intentions of fighting. However, just as the path cleared, a repulsive creature with teat in its mouth emerged, a giant ugly sorceress riding on a book. Demandingly, the grotesque being inquired about the girl's identity and her purpose for being there. Unfazed, Amelia locked eyes with the creature, silently promising retribution. But before any unholy plans could unfold, our scene transitions to the inside of the castle, where countless grotesque entities were incubating. Not just a few, but an entire horde of hundreds upon hundreds of these monstrous eggs, covering every inch of the castle's walls. It appeared that all of those despicable creatures were feeding on a massive core situated in the middle of the castle's grand hall. Standing before the core was someone who seemed to be the president of this dark guild, accompanied by a selected few of their strongest members, the Six Pillar Demons. The elderly man, probably someone like Malfoy, sensed the impending danger, but those demons assured him that no mortal or demon could ever defeat their wizardly abomination. Little did they know that the hideous creature had already met her match. It couldn't help but question how this child could withstand its most powerful abyss, magic, and render its magical tools useless. In a desperate attempt to retreat and use teleportation magic, the magician creature found itself at the mercy of Amelia, who unleashed the true power of her transformed arm to its dragon form, and with a powerful claw strike, sending the creature crashing into the unforgiving ground. With her keen eyes, Amelia noticed an abundance of grotesque creatures flying nearby and decided it was time to rid herself of these nuisances. She encountered all sorts of dark creatures, including one with 6 hideous balloons. But in Amelia's eyes, they were nothing more than insignificant garbage. Tapping into her dragon heritage, Amelia triggered a transformation that turned her wings into those of the majestic Golden Dragon King, releasing a thunderous roar that shattered the very foundations of the Dark Guild. The sound of her roar was excruciating, especially for that one with its 6 pathetic melons. Within moments, the Dark Guild's creatures detonated, leaving nothing but a pool of dark blood on the ground. Amelia, remaining composed in her calm demeanor, continued her determined stride towards the castle, feeling everything was under her control. Suddenly, Amelia summoned her small wings and leaped swiftly into the air, only to be confronted by yet another repulsive giant creature standing in her path. This monstrosity had the audacity to demand answers before she proceeded any further. Needless to say, Amelia found it utterly annoying, and with a swift and powerful kick, she launched the demonic giant creature soaring through the air for a duration that felt like an entire decade. With her sheer force, she cleared her path and finally arrived in front of the grand hall of the castle, where she had been seeking her target all along. However, she couldn't help but feel slightly disappointed as the once Malfoy-like figure had transformed into a grotesque octopus-like abomination. Despite the unsettling change, the man, now more akin to a creepy octopus, immediately recognized Amelia's presence and welcomed her with great enthusiasm. I'm not sure how, but in a matter of seconds, the ancient man Malfoy's body got destroyed and exploded, and, of course, this scene shocked his high-ranking generals. It appeared that the Dragon Lord, Amelia, was responsible for it, casually ending the one-sided battle with a flick of her paw, or whatever it was. However, what she didn't expect was Malfoy's body regenerating in no time. Even without getting his ugly head back, somehow that old hag started talking, asking Amelia why she suddenly woke up from her eternal slumber and came here after such a long time. He even asked if, by any chance, she could find Queen Elizabeth. This scene annoyed and surprised Amelia as she witnessed the regeneration and the talking of this ancient man. In that very moment, something strange began to grow and move around Amelia. Within a short time, those tentacle-like appendages wrapped themselves all over her body. Clearly, it was the work of that octopus-like general who thought he caught her off guard, attempting to seal Amelia and finish her quickly. However, Amelia had no clue what he was trying to do. Then she impulsively bit down on one of the octopus's legs as if it were her favorite food. The octopus demon, though that shorty girl is just struggling pointlessly, so didn't take her seriously. Surprisingly, she started to devour the whole thing, demonstrating her seemingly infinite stomach capacity. The entire body of the demon creature emerged from underground. He didn't expect Amelia to be able to do such a thing, believing she had overestimated her powers and can't swallow his entire large body. Unfortunately for him, he quickly realized she actually could and began begging for others to help, especially from his president Malfoy. Alas, it was already too late. In a matter of moments, Amelia almost completely consumed the octopus-like demon and unexpectedly felt a sense of relief after having such a delicious meal in a long time. Witnessing Amelia's power, one of the generals, who resembled a waifu bitch, approached her and pretended to surrender herself. However, as she got close enough, she unleashed a seductive kiss towards Amelia, attempting to make her an obedient puppet. It appears that Amelia was affected by that kiss, or perhaps she was also just pretending to be affected. The bitchy girl with her bitchy underwear moved closer with a smug expression and confidently declared that no one can resist her kiss spell. Using her finger, she lifted Amelia's face slightly and announced that from that very moment, Amelia would be her puppet. However, in a funny and somewhat disgusting turn of events, Amelia burped, and the force of that burp not only canceled out the seductive effects of the kiss, but also launched the bitchy girl like a rocket. It seems the spiciness of the octopus was bothering Amelia's stomach, causing her to burp like that. The next opponent was a kid who thought he was stronger than the previous two. He foolishly jumped into action, seeking revenge and aiming to kill Amelia. Yet our Dragon Lord didn't even bother to move. She effortlessly slapped the poor boy's face, sending him flying in another direction, crashing right through the castle walls and creating a brand new window. Not long after, the two remaining high-level generals decided to attack Amelia simultaneously with 100% of their power and energy. Well, they got what they deserved for disrupting Queen Elizabeth's mount and blocking her way, another slap in face. With no more pests around, Amelia slowly started to approach Malfoy, wondering how this ugly guy had the audacity to try and replace Queen Elizabeth with these pathetic individuals to roll her continent. Amelia didn't even consider Malfoy himself a worthy opponent. In contrast, Malfoy harbored great respect for Amelia. He quickly realized that the young girl standing before him had ascended to the level of a demon king, and he offered his congratulations. As a human who had lived for hundreds of years through deceit, Malfoy couldn't help but feel an intense envy towards Amelia's power and position. He knew he neither had the time nor the strength to reach her level. Malfoy tried to engage in conversation, but Amelia had no interest in hearing his voice. She asked if he wants to commit suicide to make it a peaceful ending, or if maybe he had any intention of fighting back. With a smile that reflected his true age of 500 years old, Malfoy showed he had no chance against Amelia, nor did he possess the courage to fight her. However, he had a surprise in store for Amelia. He declared that someone else could challenge her in a fair battle, a demon girl hidden behind him in an egg-like enclosure. Amelia's eyes widened with surprise and shock at the sight of the demon who resembled Queen Elizabeth. She wasn't sure what to make of it. Malfoy had planned everything from the beginning, and now he was laughing, pleased to see Amelia caught off guard at the appearance of someone like Queen Elizabeth. The tale of Amelia and New Elizabeth will remain concealed for now. Our scene shifts to the peaceful Leing village 1 month later. Leing, a humble farmer, toiled away in the fields while Wang Kai stood guard nearby. Our legendary useless hero discreetly planted seeds in the freshly plowed land, diligently watering them to ensure their prosperous growth. Next, he made his way to the location of his peculiar tree, aiming to harvest its fruit. After a few minutes, he procured what he needed and stashed them in his trusty basket. Accompanied by Wang Kai, he embarked on an unknown path. The robotic dog happily led the way, content with the tranquility of the day. Suddenly, it noticed its master lagging behind. MC seemed lost in his thoughts, causing the delay. With a resounding bark from Wang Kai, he snapped back to reality and sprinted to catch up. These strange musings plagued him even during simple tasks like chopping wood with his famed sword or preparing meals for Elizabeth. Even the cheerful face of Elizabeth during lunch couldn't rid him of his overthinking. Leping's prolonged silence, out of character for him, didn't go unnoticed by Elizabeth. Sensing that something was amiss, she refrained from prying, but her curiosity lingered. The scene shifted to the early hours of the morning, around 4 a.m. according to the clock. Our boy still grappled with sleeplessness, tormented by thoughts that remained a mystery to all. Suddenly he sprang from his slumber and exclaimed, "I've made a decision!" The sun began its ascent as a new day dawned, with Leping busying himself, prepared a delectable meal for Elizabeth. Amidst his apologies for waking her earlier than usual, she sensed an undercurrent and demanded he get to the point. And so, with Elizabeth's sleepy eyes fixed on him, Leping embarked upon his speech. "Elizabeth, after a year of coexistence, you understand that I pose no threat. We have witnessed the harmony between you as demon lord and me as legendary hero." With conviction, Leping urged Queen Elizabeth to relinquish her claim on his farm and return to her rightful place, ruling the world. Naturally, this unexpected request caught Elizabeth off guard, causing a sliver of unease. She questioned what caused Leping's sudden desire for her departure. With patience and determination, our MC launched into an explanation of his reasons, stating, "Originally, I believed I could find solace by hiding in this small village, ignoring the system's forewarning of the inevitable clash between the legendary hero and demon queen. I chose to remain within the confines of this village, but fate had other plans. It brought you here, leading to the damage of the village barrier. 5 centuries passed outside these walls, leaving chaos in their wake." Leping, sensing a need for clarification, didn't want to assign blame to Elizabeth. Instead, he simply reminded her that if she hadn't been here, the Dark Guild wouldn't have dared to unleash chaos upon their world. He mentioned the unfortunate incidents involving Sister Annie and the bodybuilder old man from the other day. Elizabeth, seemingly indifferent to the happenings outside the village, questioned why Leping cared so much about the world when it didn't directly affect them. In MC's eyes, if they ignored what was happening, the world would only spiral further into chaos. Leping admitted that he treasured their loving relationship and was content to remain with her forever. However, witnessing the events unfolding beyond the village walls had softened his heart, leading him to make the difficult decision to give up their peaceful life in order to make the world a better place. As expected, Queen Elizabeth once again misunderstood Leping's words, perhaps deliberately interpreting them to mean that he couldn't live without her. In a moment of disbelief, Leping confirmed the sentiment, but still asked his beloved Elizabeth to rule the world and not let his selfish desires stand in the way. He declared, as a hero, his duty was to prevent the destruction of the world, even if it meant sacrificing his idyllic existence, even if it meant facing the monsters that threatened to wipe out this place they called home. Elizabeth didn't argue. Instead, she calmly swallowed the last morsel of her food, placing her dish on the table. After a few seconds of contemplation, she responded by asking Leping if he truly wanted her to solve this problem for him. Joyful at Elizabeth's apparent agreement, Leping eagerly prepared to help her gather her belongings and return to her castle. However, Queen Elizabeth had different plans in mind. She revealed that her intention wasn't to solve the problem by leaving Leping's house. She had 2 other solutions in mind, both aimed at resolving Leping's concerns and the chaos in the outside world. Though deep down, Elizabeth suspected that Leping was using excuses to force her to leave his house, she remained steadfast in her resolve. Our boy, caught off guard by her unexpected statement, grew curious to learn of Elizabeth's proposed solutions. And so Elizabeth began explaining the wild notions swirling in her mind. First, she announced the possibility of employing a world-destroying magic spell, one that could eliminate 99% of the planet's population and potentially bring an end to the chaos. Leing, horrified at the suggestion, vehemently disagreed and implored her to reveal the second option. Maintaining her calm demeanor, Elizabeth revealed her second solution: to find a suitable person to rule the world in her stead. She pledged to secretly mentor this individual in the art of ruling from the shadows. This revelation surprised Leing, leaving him to ponder over whom Elizabeth had in mind as this suitable person. In response to Leing's questioning glances, Elizabeth confidently declared that there was only one person in the world qualified for this mission, aside from herself, Leing, our very own protagonist. Confused and intrigued, Leing couldn't fathom how Elizabeth envisioned him becoming the ruler of the world. Curiosity gnawed at him as he wondered just how Elizabeth expected him to step into this new role. The next very moment, Leing found himself clutching his sword, his mind reeling as he tried to grasp how he ended up in this peculiar predicament. Just then, a commanding voice resonated through the air, jolting him back to reality. "Be vigilant and commence your swordsmanship training." The voice belonged to none other than Queen Elizabeth, who lounged on a sunbed a short distance away, basking in the serene view and savoring the thrill of turning the tables on the legendary hero. Closing her eyes, she allowed her thoughts to wander, focusing on our protagonist, Leing. Elizabeth acknowledged that, in terms of raw power, Leing surpassed her in some aspects. However, she knew that when it came to psychology and knowledge, Leing was no match for her. The realization of her superiority brought her immense satisfaction. But back then, when Leing dared to ask her to leave his home and farm, shattered her heart and damaged her feelings. Gazing upon her magnificent melons with a hint of self-assured relief, she found solace in the heartfelt words that Leing uttered, for they revealed his inability to live without her in Elizabeth's opinion. Through her discerning eyes, Leing's request masked a deeper desire for her attention, a power play enacted by challenging her authority. Elizabeth was certain that Leing, awash in the sea of his own infatuation, had fallen hopelessly in love with her. Meanwhile, Leing remained oblivious to Elizabeth's interpretation of his actions and intentions. His focus lay solely on the rhythmic swings of his sword, as he pondered whether repetitively wielding it 1,000 times a day could truly bestow upon him the mastery of swordsmanship. Elizabeth found it amazing to be the only one that is be able to bully strongest human on the planet. As the queen, she knew that Leing, akin to a god of creation and production, only needed to focus on honing his swordsmanship and magic to become invincible. Surprisingly, her aloof disposition toward men changed after a year of living with Leing. Thoughts of marriage and their potential offspring consumed her mind, realizing that their child would possess unparalleled strength. Elizabeth entertained devilish thoughts of creating a baby with Leing, though she hypocritically blamed him for harboring the same desire for the sake of their next generation. In a moment of amusement, she erupted into laughter and declared that she wouldn't easily accept Leing's proposal to marry and create adorable babies together. It was clear that Leing needed to work hard to win her heart, but in my opinion, he already won it. Just as Leing heard Elizabeth's laughter, he remained as clueless as ever, wondering what could have caused the queen to laugh so loudly. However, in his attempt to swing his sword for the 100th time, something peculiar occurred. The legendary sword transformed into a young child and fell to the ground. Leing stood there in utter disbelief, questioning the reality of what he was witnessing. The child, furious at being referred to as a kid, introduced himself as Alpha, the sword spirit of the majestic holy sword. In that moment, Queen Elizabeth noticed the child's sudden appearance and descended to investigate, as she had a habit of disliking unexpected guests. Initially, her glare locked onto Alpha, while he reciprocated the gaze and unmistakably recognized her as Queen Elizabeth. Without hesitation, the boy sprang into action, launching an attack at the queen, considering her his sole enemy. His eyes aflame with determination, Alpha was met with an unexpected kick to the face from Elizabeth, causing him to be sent flying several meters away. However, as Alpha landed on the far side of the yard, Elizabeth realized that talking to the boy was necessary. She beckoned him to come and sit with them. Against all odds, the legendary sword boy, now sporting something new on his head, composed himself and made his way over, settling down beside Leing and Elizabeth. At first, Leing found himself apologizing to Alpha for unknowingly exploiting the sword's consciousness during his long-time usage. In response, Alpha quipped, "It was to be expected. I appeared at the critical moment when the hero was battling the Demon Lord." However, Alpha harbored mild irritation, or maybe even more than that, toward Leing for merely using him to chop wood all year long. He yearned to bite, or at least give Leing a resounding slap to exact revenge for such misuse. Unfortunately for Alpha, he was short in stature, making it effortless for Leing to prevent any retaliation. Another aspect that infuriated the sword boy was Leing's deviation from the script, forming a friendship with the Demon Lord. Alpha solely desired to be wielded against Queen Elizabeth, fueling his anger even further. However, in a moment that sent a chill down his spine, Elizabeth confronted Alpha with an intimidating gaze, questioning his burning desire to kill her. In an instant, Alpha obediently retreated to his place like a well-behaved student and promptly declared that he no longer harbored any intention of harming the great demon queen. He attributed the entire situation to a fault within the system and proclaimed Elizabeth as his savior and master. Unfazed by whether the boy's words held any truth or were mere pretense, Elizabeth turned to him and requested assistance in Leing's quest to rule the world, viewing his appearance as a timely opportunity. Alpha stood there, stunned and utterly confused, seeking an explanation from Leing regarding Elizabeth's reference to ruling the world. Leing, being his usual not-so-cool self, awkwardly responded, "Actually, I want to save the world, not rule over it." The sword boy's shock heightened, prompting him to implore Leing for a thorough explanation. In response, Leing uttered with all the conviction of a damp noodle, "Although I have idled for far too long, I have decided to embrace my duty as the hero, to train and ultimately save the world." Alpha's face contorted in disbelief at Leing's stupidity as he questioned, "Don't you even know where your talents lie?" The sword boy, with his own eyes, witnessed Leing amassing experience points equivalent to battling a demon king simply by swinging Alpha himself around a mere 100 times. It seemed that everyone, except Leing himself, was aware of his profound abilities and power. Leing, with the assistance of Alpha and Elizabeth as special coaches, boldly claimed that he could master swordsmanship in no time. These words incensed Alpha, fueling his rage at the unbelievable level of ignorance displayed by Leing. He yearned to showcase Leing's true potential, a potential that didn't even require formal swordsmanship training. However, before Alpha could unveil the truth, Elizabeth raised a finger, silencing him and sealing his lips with magical thread. For reasons unknown, Elizabeth withheld Leing's knowledge of his own talents, instead instructing him to sit and have a private discussion with the sword boy. With a massive demonic hand, Elizabeth hoisted Alpha up, leaving the poor boy utterly helpless and unable to escape. Elizabeth moved behind a tree while the demonic hand carried the boy along, undoubtedly subjecting him to a physical lesson to ensure his compliance and silence. After a brief interval, Elizabeth returned, now accompanied by the beaten and crestfallen sword boy. He no longer dared to mention anything about Leing's talents, but vowed to cooperate in any way possible. With an air of superiority, Elizabeth commanded them to commence Leing's swordsmanship training, making it clear that any further digressions would be met with severe consequences. Their conversation between them ended right there, and the scene shifted to Tatano Town, where a young lady was enthusiastically handing out recruitment flyers for a guild called Grey Wolf. And a little further down the road, there was a half-chicken, half-human creature urging people to buy her special crispy fried chickens to enjoy while watching the guild competition. I mean, seriously, they're roasting and frying their own kind. And our heroes seem to have teleported right into the middle of that town for some reason. In first seconds of their entrance, Elizabeth sensed that Tatano Town was gearing up for a massive event. Probably she dragged the poor boy there in hopes of expanding his social circle and boosting his non-existent intelligence. And Leing, my dear, was fully aware of Elizabeth's motives. But it seemed like Alpha wasn't too thrilled about being dragged into this mess. However, when Elizabeth dropped the bombshell and asked Alpha if he trusted her enough, when she says she can split him in two or not, that scaredy cat boy totally lost his shit and jumped straight into the safety of Leping's arms. Now he's all like, what do you need me to do, bro? I'll do anything for you. After moving right along for a few seconds, Leping's eyes caught sight of a flyer lying on the ground, and he just couldn't resist picking it up. Meanwhile, MC, the curious little bugger, couldn't help but wonder why these flyers were scattered everywhere and what kind of event was going down to be announced widely like this. The picture on the flyer featured a clenched fist, holding God knows what. MC turned to Elizabeth, hoping she had some juicy intel to spill, and, well, Elizabeth spilled the beans. It turns out, that picture represents a competition where every guild sends their best fighters to smack the shit out of each other. Suddenly, a booming sound of a drum in the distance caught everyone's attention. It was like a siren, calling out to anyone and everyone who had the balls to participate in the event and place their bets. Everyone, except Leping and Elizabeth, rushed towards that guy to place their bets with excitement. Some believed that the Saint Sword Guild would come out on top, while others were leaning towards the Elves Guild, and a few other souls were rooting for the newly created guild to snatch victory. Sensing the buzz, Leping grabbed Elizabeth's hand and suggested they shouldn't miss this chance and stick around to watch the heated matches between the guilds together. Soon enough, they found themselves standing in front of a towering arena building, a sight that left Leping in awe as he had never seen something so grand before. As they attempted to enter the arena, they were halted by a rather imposing demi-human resembling a gigantic cow. This creature was responsible for checking tickets before granting entry. With confidence in his voice, Leping urged Elizabeth to let him handle the situation, and she agreed, curious to see what he would come up with. MC, lacking a ticket to gain access, attempted to purchase some for both of them. For some unknown reason, Alpha seemed to have vanished into thin air, but that's not something important. Unfortunately, the money-grubbing cow dude decided to take advantage of the situation, jacking up the ticket prices to a whopping 10 times the original amount. Leping, feeling disheartened by his lack of funds and not willing to waste such an exorbitant amount of gold, looked crestfallen. However, witnessing her beloved Leping's struggle to accomplish such a simple task, Elizabeth couldn't remain idle any longer. With a mere flick of her finger, she hypnotized the ugly creature, and just like that, the cow dude changed his tune. He presented Leping with 2 VIP tickets, free of charge, much to Leping's surprise. Bowing before them, the transformed cowman showed them the way, and Elizabeth took the lead, leaving Leping in awe of the sudden change in the cow guy's disposition. In no time, they arrived at the gate to the VIP section of the arena, passed through, and finally reached their ultimate destination. As Leping's eyes laid upon the luxurious room reserved for special individuals, he couldn't help but be captivated by its splendor. However, unlike Leping, Elizabeth found it to be rather ordinary. There, lurking in the shadows, not just one but 2 individuals hid in a discreet spot, secretly yearning to witness the epic battle between the guilds unfold. And among the VIP seats, other influential figures were present, like that spellwriter dude or the intoxicated blacksmith dwarf, and let's not forget those orange and purple sword wielders, famously known as the Saint Sword Guild's waifus. Of course, those were just their nicknames, not their real identities. Observing Elizabeth and Leping's unexpected appearance in the VIP section, the purple sword girl nudged her orange companion, signaling for her to keep a close eye on these unknown intruders. Moments after our intrepid duo settled into their seats, Elizabeth wasted no time in urging the boy to reveal some special snacks she had on her mind. Meanwhile, Leping, overwhelmed by the enormity and opulence of this room, found himself on edge, experiencing such grandeur for the very first time. The anticipation in the air was palpable when suddenly a booming voice echoed throughout the space, warmly welcoming all the ladies and gentlemen present. Like a spectacle from the heavens above, a bright yellow object descended, landing right in the heart of the arena. An ugly goblin atop a massive chicken appeared, decked out like a damn rock star. This goblin wasted no time in making his grand entrance. With a face that only a mother could love, he confidently proceeded to introduce the final 4 contestants who had reached this climactic stage. First up, we have Ching, the genius swordsman from the Saint Sword Guild, a blue-eyed heartthrob of a guy. Next in line, we have Jaula, the valiant general from the Giant Bear Guild, another eccentric and rather unsightly bloke. Following closely behind is Travis, the dashing fellow from the Elf Guild, a lady exuding beauty that puts the previous guy to shame. And last but not least, we are graced with the presence of Yi, the mysterious guest hailing from the Sword Saint Guild, a being so enigmatic that no one truly knows their nature. And just like that, the introductions came to an end, punctuated by the Goblin Chicken Rider's roaring proclamation, hyping up the crowd with anticipation for this final battle. With the agility of a grasshopper bouncing on its steed, the goblin leaped out of the way, officially initiating the start of this electrifying clash. All 4 of those imposing individuals glared at each other, the tension palpable in the air. Among them, Travis, the young elf, quickly grasped the nature of his opponents and the situation, even before the others did. In his opinion, Gola, a member of the Giant Bear Guild, was not someone he needed to worry about. On the other hand, the ugly guy kept repetitively muttering, "I will crush you, I will crush you." Travis held a similar opinion about the other masked individual, considering him to be a recent recruit and a weakling of the Sword Saint Guild. The only one who truly caught his attention was Ching, as Travis believed him to be the sole threat. Ching, the calm and handsome member of the Sword Saint Guild, was his primary target. The battle between them finally commenced when Gayola started running, swiftly passing through Ching, the skilled swordmaster, and making a beeline for the elf. Travis found himself with little time for hesitation and instinctively reached for his quiver, swiftly pulling out 3 arrows and taking careful aim. In a single fluid motion, he released the arrows simultaneously, each one intended for a different target. Ching and Yi effortlessly evaded the arrows, while Gaola skillfully caught the arrow aimed at him before it could strike his body. With astonishing ease, he broke the arrow using just one of his colossal hands. In that moment, Gaola's thoughts revolved around the need to neutralize the elf before dealing with the others. Consequently, he discarded the broken arrow onto the ground and prepared to take action. However, to his astonishment, the arrowhead suddenly began rapidly expanding, growing larger and larger within a matter of seconds. It encircled not only the ugly guy, but also the other 2 combatants, ensnaring them like helpless birds trapped in a cage. They found themselves immobilized by the entangling mass of roots. Observing the successful execution of his plan, Travis maintained a safe distance, a confident expression on his face. He gazed at Gaola, the colossal figure before him, and boldly declared that such a wild beast like the ugly man deserved to be imprisoned forever within a cage. Yet Gaola proved to be far from easily intimidated. He exuded confidence in his own power, mocking the elf's feeble attempt with roots that could never hold him. Determined to break free from the entanglement and crush the roots, Gaola unleashed his fierce ram skill. However, the moment his body made contact with the roots, he discovered himself rendered immobile, his energy rapidly draining with each passing second. Bewildered by his predicament, he couldn't help but wonder why this was happening to him. With pride, Travis responded to the bewildered Jaula, explaining, "These are the roots of the gum tree. Upon impact, they shrink and release an extremely sticky fluid that drains energy." Travis found himself fully engrossed in his battle against Jaula, completely forgetting about the others for a moment. However, to his surprise, the blue-eyed individual swiftly unsheathed his sword and effortlessly severed the roots that held them captive. Ching's speed and agility caught not only Yi's attention but also Travis's. As expected, Travis couldn't help but feel a twinge of unease. As Ching emerged from Travis's prison of roots, he respectfully apologized for inadvertently destroying the elf's plants. Nevertheless, the prospect of facing a formidable opponent after a long time filled Travis with excitement. Once again, Travis took aim at Ching, this time using magical arrows. He unleashed 10 arrows simultaneously, employing his violent butterfly dance skill. Ching, the composed swordmaster, closed his eyes and remained calm until the very last moment, repeating a mantra to himself. No fears, no doubts, no surprises, no confusion. With a sudden burst of energy, Ching opened his eyes and unleashed his bluebird skill. The power of his attack was so immense that it obliterated all of Travis's arrows in one swift motion. Not only that, but it caught the elf off guard and severed one of his arms. Travis couldn't help but berate himself for failing to anticipate Ching's powerful skill. The force of Ching's bluebird skill sent Travis crashing to the ground, his severed arm landing a few meters away. Slowly, Ching approached him and declared that the battle was already over and it was time to give up. Without lifting his head, Travis responded, "Ching, you truly deserve the title of genius within the Sword Saint Guild." A peculiar smile then spread across Travis's face as he shouted, "Don't underestimate me. If you are a genius man, then I am also a genius elf." In an instant, Ching noticed a swarm of magical butterflies closing in, not only around his sword, but also dangerously close to his face. Sensing the imminent danger, Ching braced himself, but it was too late. The butterflies exploded, creating a massive green explosion right before Ching's eyes. The force of the explosion sent Ching's sword flying, but he managed to shield himself with his bare hands just in time. Although his body suffered some damage from the blast, it was to be expected considering the magnitude of the explosion at such close proximity. Travis, noticing the safe distance between them, pulled out a peculiar seed and held it between his lips. He then tossed it to the ground, causing it to crack peculiarly. Before long, a gigantic flower sprouted from that very seed. But it wasn't just any ordinary flower, it was a healing lily. With a command from Travis, the flower attached itself to his shoulder as if it were a living creature. It defied belief as it lifted off the ground. The plant began to transform, eventually taking the exact shape of Travis's severed hand. Then, triumphantly, Travis declared that no race could match the might of the elves. However, his victory speech was abruptly cut short when Jaula seized the opportunity to strike from behind, crushing Travis to the ground. Unfortunately for our elf friend, it seems that he won't be able to stand again anytime soon. Jaula appeared satisfied with taking down this obnoxious elf boy, but he had no intention of letting others leave the scene alive. Just like Travis before, he ignored the masked individual and set his sights on Ching instead. And the blue-eyed swordmaster was well aware of Jaula's formidable strength and the potential danger from him. The crowd of viewers began to cheers for the giant bear-like figure, urging him to crush his next opponent as well. That son of a goblin, serving as the event's announcer, couldn't help but praise Jaula's impressive maneuver that turned Travis into something like a small plant. The chicken rider eagerly anticipated how the injured swordmaster Ching would handle this gorilla-like adversary. Ching, with a peculiar move reminiscent of Thor, called upon his sword lodged in the ground. Just like that, the sword swiftly responded to its master's summons, returning to Ching with lightning speed. Glancing at Gyola, Ching noticed that he had managed to escape from Travis's entangling roots using his own sweat. It was something even Ching hadn't expected. The gorilla guy slowly approached, his entire body covered in sweat and a menacing purple aura. With a declaration that power is everything, he vowed to crush them all. Just like a cat pouncing on its prey, he leapt towards Ching, using 70% of his muscle power, aiming to crush the poor handsome guy just like he did with Travis. But wait! Ching managed to dodge in the very last moment. Not only did Ching narrowly evade that attack, but he also seized the opportunity to unleash his flashy cold slash skill. His skill landed on several parts of Jaula's body, but alas, Jaula's thick skin or maybe his muscles were too darn tough to be penetrated. The gorilla, Jaula, stood back up, seemingly unfazed, and moved as if nothing had happened to him. Meanwhile, Ching stared at his damaged sword in disbelief, realizing that not only did it fail to inflict much damage on Jaula, but the sword itself was also left in a sorry state. The giant Bear Guild member had no intentions of letting Ching off easy this time. With 80% of his muscle power, he leaped into action, aiming to finish off the sword boy. In return, Qing thought he didn't have enough time to dodge this one, so he attempted to block the attack with the help of his sword. He managed to block it, but the sheer force of the impact sent the poor boy flying several meters backward. Thankfully, Qing emerged unharmed and quickly regained his stance. As he looked at his misshapen sword, he realized it was of no use to him any longer, so he dropped it to the ground. Suddenly, Jola charged once again, this time with a horrifying 90% of his muscle power. With no other options at hand, Qing desperately tried his best to avoid Jala's onslaught, and it seems he succeeded in dodging each and every one of them. Our MC, eagerly observing the scene, couldn't contain his excitement to find out who would emerge as the final winner. He excitedly asked for Elizabeth's opinion, but the queen remained silent, blatantly ignoring Leping. Just a little further away, the purple and orange swords from the Saint Sword Guild watched the battle with concern for Qing's safety. They never expected a member of the Giant Bear Guild to possess such immense strength and power. Suddenly, the purple girl had an epiphany and realized that this must be the work of the Demon's Dark Guild that caused this guy to be this horrifying.